Dos. Hey, Ricardo, thanks so much for joining.
Nacho.
So, yeah, so well, this Bagatelle conversation. We have the privilege of having Ricardo. So, well, now we will do it in English for Twitter friends who follow me, and I'm tweeting in English most of the time. Uh, though we are both from Spain, so this is a bit odd for us. But Ricardo is a polyglot, so he wouldn't have a problem doing this. So people who are in Taleb Twitter already know Ricardo because he's an instructor at Real World Risk Institute, the seminar that Taleb is doing. Ricardo is a mathematician. He's a researcher at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique in Paris, right, Ricardo?
Correct.
And he's one of the most eminent people that is out there on Bitcoin. Um, First question for you, Ricardo. Are you Satoshi Nakamoto?
No. And even I can prove that Satoshi Nakamoto was not a mathematician. Good question, by the way.
Okay, because now it is, I wanted to start with a good punchline. You know, this is that you were sleepy. You were telling me. So the thing is that I've known about you because I've been twice to Real World Risk Institute, so I'm a big Taleb fan, and it was also interesting because first time I went there. It was a slightly different demographic of the second time. So first time was like in 2017, I think, or 2018, and there were a lot of guys who had been trading Bitcoin and had made money. So then I went 2 years later, and it was more conventional people into finance and people into I don't know, software, things like that. So in the first editions, I think, and I also have heard from other groups, it was like more strange kind of demographics. Okay, so there were professional poker players when I was there for the first time, things like that.
That's because the Bitcoiners are the first everywhere, right? They try
Maybe,
things
yeah, the early adopters.
to do with that, but
Yeah.
trying for the first time something.
Mm. Well, and the thing is that some WhatsApp groups now they have moved to Signal and all that. The people were before you were a Real World Risk Institute instructor, because when I was there, you were not yet one. They were already sharing videos of you, you know, like about Bitcoin and your opinion on Bitcoin. And I watched some of them, and 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 that's the thing, that you are so knowledgeable not only on cryptography and all that, but also on history, and we will come to that. You are in economy, you are also doing trading and so on. So it's like if there was a guy like Satoshi Nakamoto, is not a group of people that I think that's your theory, but it's one person, it will be someone like Ricardo. But you think it's a group of people, right?
Thank you, but I mean, yeah. First, I think that really there is no one person as Satoshi Nakamoto, but a group of persons probably collaborated to build the protocol, right? And not well. In any case, I mean, well, because the diversity of the expertise you need to conceive Bitcoin. I mean, as you said, you need to know cryptography, programming. Mathematics and economy and finance, and had a good feeling about what you can do with that. So, I mean, it's quite natural that it started in the cypherpunk mailing list because there people were thinking about the problem of creating a decentralized cryptocurrency for a long time, and it's an evolution of ideas. I mean, the Bitcoin appeared after many failed trials, right? Finally, the main problem was the double spend problem, and nobody knew how to solve it properly. Uh, and in the Bitcoin paper was really the first practical solution.
By the way, in the Bitcoin initial paper by Satoshi, there is a Spanish guy there, a certain Xavier
Right.
Serrano.
Yes. In the reference, there is one collaborator of Quisquater, I think. Is one of Avila, right? Is his name?
Yes, Seret Avila, I think. You don't know him personally.
No, I don't know him. I don't know him.
Is-
I
is-
know Quisquater, that is a researcher in a Belgian researcher, and indeed, I've come from mathematics, right? So I don't know quite well the people in computer science. So
the Bitcoin world is like, I mean, I'm really like, I mean, I'm a bit interested into trading. I don't understand Bitcoin very well, of course, not nearly as you do. I'm just curious. Do people like have been long time in this world like yourself, like know each other? Is like a very small world, or it is getting bigger? But I mean, from
well,
earlier guys like the guys who are in the paper from Satoshi, is
there are different generations, right? I mean, I think people arrive to Bitcoin in different waves, and well, you know the people. I mean, we used to meet in the Bitcoin Talk forum, this forum created by Satoshi, and there, well, I mean, back in 2019 when I became interested, uh, I used to read this forum, and for instance, I saw some famous posts of Satoshi and Hal Finney, etc. So of course I was new there, so I didn't know the people that were there before, and well, little by little, you know the people that come with your wave. The big event that happened later was this big conference in Amsterdam, where we all the people more or less related to Bitcoin met.
when was
This was
that?
in 2013, 2014, maybe. In 2013, I started to write some articles in El País, in
Yes.
the Spanish newspaper, just to, in the technology section,
Hmm.
just to explain a little bit how Bitcoin works, etc. And it was quite nice because at the time it was technology, right? So there was no. I mean, I could just write what I felt, and which is quite different from what you later could read in the economy section. Was the hard
Actually,
years of Bitcoin. And then 2014, there were all the banks against it, and it was the drug dealer money, and so on, right?
Paul
It was all
Krugman, yeah, it is. So I will refer to many things that I heard to the podcast that you did in Spanish with Juan Suk, whom I know, and that was very good, very extensive. And you mentioned that as you were writing in the technologies section, explaining what Bitcoin is and doing very valuable scientific popularization of the concept. Paul Krugman was writing in the economy section while they were recovering articles he was writing for New York Times, like saying that this was almost a scam. And actually, I have to say that I'm like so disappointed that I didn't, or that the Real World Risk Institute was not invented before, because Paul Krugman was one of the guys I used to read, like with a
Krugman
lot of
is a
interest.
great contrarian indicator. You just do whatever the opposite of what he
I
claims.
know. Well, he
That
did it for the internet, that it was like a
so ridiculous
sophisticated fax machine or something like that that would do nothing to change productivity or something like that. It's something that people still remember. The thing is, I also think he's intelligent and a good writer, so that's a bit problematic, right? Because apparently he can be brilliant and he can say smart things, but he can also get so wrong about some others. But yeah,
well, but what I found a little bit odd is that he certainly was writing these from, it's something that happens to in academics. You are specialized on one field. You know everything that has been written in this field, and you think that you understand everything that can happen in this field. And then something new appears from somewhere else, right? That impacts your field. And then sometimes people in academics are too close, their mind is too close to admit that really could be something interesting coming from a cypherpunk mailing list. And this is a problem of well, not only in academics, of people that just they have worked all their life in a field and have a hard time admitting that something new and interesting can come from outside their field. Of course, it's true 99% of the time, right? I mean that someone just invents something that indeed was discarded long time ago, but not every time. And so I think when one is a true academic, he should look at everything that may look interesting and find out why it's not true. I mean, in mathematics, for example, I mean there are famous problems like the Riemann hypothesis, for which I know a little bit. I wrote a survey on the Riemann hypothesis, and from time to time people send me proofs of the Riemann hypothesis. Well, I know exactly where I have to look to see that it cannot work the way they do. But you need to look. I mean, you need to look at what they are doing to make sure that really there is not, it's not a really brilliant idea that everybody has overlooked. But just when you refuse to look at what comes, and you look at it with the glasses of your experience and your narrowness of mind, then you can get very wrong. And this is what I was feeling reading these papers of Krugman. At the same time, I was writing this, explaining the technology. Really, I the difference that with Krugman, I didn't have a bag of monetary knowledge, right? That and monetary preconceptions, so I could look at monetary theory in a more fresh way. But also, I think it's important to understand the technology that is behind. And sometimes these economists that write and meet an opinion on Bitcoin, at least at the beginning, didn't know how this really worked. Because after Krugman, there were Spanish economists that wrote some articles in the same direction, but you could tell from what they were saying that they didn't know how the network was working. I mean,
that's the thing. I don't even remember what Krugman. I mean, I remember reading Krugman, and it's like, I was fearing missing out. Maybe, at that time, I even was writing a blog, and sometimes I would write something about Bitcoin, but was an experiment or something that I didn't know anything about. But like, giving credit to Krugman that this was some sort of a scam and not digging any further. But I don't remember. I didn't bother to look in depth enough to form my own opinion. But I don't remember what his concerns were. I know also Nuriel Rubini, who is
another one. Yeah,
another one is like he is more an anti-Bitcoin activist.
He's a little bit. He was saying that Bitcoin wasn't backed by anything. He that is not like gold that is backed by a metal, right? And he didn't understand that it was backed by the technology and the protocol, because he didn't understand the protocol, right? This is probably the reason. But I felt at the time very upset, because for me it was clear that there were kind of stopping many people from looking more in detail and investing in Bitcoin, which at the time, if you had invested in 2013, it was great, because you could benefit. At that time in 2013, is when there was the bubble that went to $250, and later at the end of that 2013 to $1,000.
Yeah. I think you wrote a blog post or an article in El País that was Bitcoin unstoppable, and it's like when it was at $200, something like that. So
Yeah,
he said,
yeah,
now
yeah, yeah.
we're reaching 50,000, I think, today, maybe.
You know, I usually try to not give any kind of financial advice. Everyone should take their decisions, right? But you should present the true facts and also the advantages and the problems. And at the time, I was feeling really that it was important that people understand that this wasn't going to disappear, and this wasn't a scam.
Hmm.
And even before that,
Well,
I mean,
it was a new technology that may have not, but it was something. Well, it was a curious person like you should be looking at. I mean, it is a scam. No, what that's like. I don't know. I think that's also like your interest was like a pure one. You were maybe not into it, at least initially, for pure speculation purposes. You were really interested
no,
into the
my
cryptography
approach
part.
at the beginning was not investing, was just curiosity of the technology. And of course,
Exactly.
I had the same reaction that most of the people when I first heard in an economics forum about Bitcoin. I say, well, that's strange. How it can work a currency that is decentralized, etc. And then I saw that there was this paper. So I look at the Bitcoin paper. It was early on 2011, and for me, maybe I had an advantage that, with respect to the average people, is that I knew about the standard cryptographic algorithms. Indeed, just a couple of years before, I did organize a cryptography course, summer course in Madrid, in the Universidad Carlos III, because there's a lot to do. Cryptography is very much related to dynamical systems. That is my field. Some of the cryptographical algorithms are just dynamical systems, discrete dynamical systems. And what surprised me is that the cryptography, as far as I could tell, was properly done, which for me proved that this was not a scam. I mean, if you want to run a scam, you don't bother about doing properly the cryptography and the mathematics that is quite hard to do, right?
Hmm.
So this convinced me that well, at the time I didn't know if this really works, but I knew that the person who was trying to do this was trying to do something honest, which is important.
Hmm.
And after that point, I started to study, but my interest was academic, right?
Hmm.
But then I got involved in the forum. At the time, I was trading with gold, and yeah, I remember a funny thing is because so at that time Bitcoin went up from $1 to $32. It was in the summer of 2011, and then was the first bubble that I really lived on real time, and then it went down to $2 from 32 to $2, right? $1 to $2. It was a big crash, much bigger than what we have seen before. At the time, I was not invested, and so you could see that already at the time that there was a very high volatility, and is well, I mean. It was also interesting to analyze the volatility and this bubble phenomenon.
Hmm.
So, well, I mean, I lived through all this period. Then it stagnated for a long period until 2012, when it started to climb to $3, $4, $8, $10, $20, and then it reached again the previous all-time high of $32, and it started to climb to $250. And I remember at the time that I was kind of well, trading more on the gold market, and in one forum that I participate, I told people, this Bitcoin thing could be big, and it's going to impact gold. So just for hedging, I think it's wise. It was at the time it was $70, $75. I think it's wise to buy one Bitcoin for each ounce of gold that you own. because this is like a gold meteorite hitting the earth, that
And
suddenly
you would do that?
but no, but I mean, it's quite true. I mean many of the properties of Bitcoin are very much related, similar to the properties of gold.
It's
Then there are main
designed
differences.
for, right? The properties are like that because it's designed to be that way.
Yes, this was the intention of Satoshi, is to build he himself. He states that he wanted to build an electronic form of gold, which is a quite natural idea, but it's an improved version of gold because it's divisible infinitely often. And if you want, with gold, you need to know how to recognize gold. It's not very difficult, but I'm talking about physical gold, right? When you have a gold coin, you need to know. See, if you purchase a gold coin, you need to have some minimum expertise to be able to check that it's gold or that has the right content of gold. This is not very difficult. I mean, or grandfathers or the grandfathers of our grandfathers were doing this every day. Essentially, for a coin, you check the size and you check the weight, right? And with this, essentially, it's very hard to fork. And Bitcoin improves that. You don't need to check authenticity of Bitcoin. As long as the transaction is recorded on the blockchain, is authentic Bitcoins, right? So it has some improvement, and it has some different properties. It's also much easier to carry gold, to carry Bitcoin than to carry gold, right? When you
You
go
don't have to carry, right?
through a border, you have to declare some amount of gold that you carry, but if you have your seed phrase in your head, you can carry it everywhere you want to go. So yeah, and I think it's true that it's going to impact the gold market because there is some non-empty intersection and I think substantial intersection on the kind of investor that is attracted by gold and by Bitcoin. And it's not incompatible. It's good to have both. I mean, it's certainly good to have both and to be diversified that way.
And you were mentioning that you have observed all these bubbles. The first one when it went from $1 to whatever 20, then from 200 to, well, yeah. You have all the history. There's also like you are a bit of like a historian of Bitcoin, which is also interesting because I'm like kind of historian oriented, looking always to the history, and see, the thing that I think in Bitcoin parlance, they always talk about this Bitcoin halving, and that it may be that we are getting into a new kind of these bubbles that are like that. But after each bubble, this the floor at which the bubble will deflate is always higher than before the previous bubble,
Correct,
right?
correct. Yeah.
And it's that when I read these things from the outside and so on, it seems a bit esoteric kind of thinking. Like you would. That's also why I appreciate like your thought on this, because you are not like this. And you don't seem to me ideological in the sense that I've read not till the end, but almost that book from a guy called Saifedean Ammous. It's like a Lebanese economist.
Yes, the economist that wrote this book
Yeah,
on the Bitcoin standard.
Bitcoin standard, and it was like with a foreword by Nassim Taleb, and it's one of the say most serious people references that you have out there, and yet it's very ideological. He trashes
Yeah.
Keynes and because
Well,
there are like some other ideas to me, like that Keynes wanted to introduce this kind of economy in order to subdue the power of the family because he has certain sexual orientation and culture going astray also because of big money.
I think well, this is one of the dark points of the book, maybe. But I like when I first read the book of Saifedan, I like it, and I wrote some kind of informal review on Twitter. There's some thread about. Yeah, one of the things that I didn't like is how he describes Keynesian economics and Keynes himself, because Keynes is a very interesting person, but usually he's not properly presented in the economic books because some economic school has appropriated this figure, right? Keynes originally was a mathematician, he was a probabilist, and he has a very curious book of probability that is not really, I mean, probability was refounded in the 50s by Kolmogorov, by the Russian school. And so in some sense, the foundations was measure theory, kind of hard mathematical setup. But then with this, you can develop all the theory of martingales, of stochastic processes, etc. All the modern stuff in economics that is used to model, in financial mathematics, for example, they use this a lot. But at the time when Keynes wrote his book, it was about another kind of probability that is maybe closer to Taleb's theory. It was about causality. I mean, how do you infer from those observations the probability of that something is happening behind that? And it's very
I've
interesting.
read
It's a
the
book
sections
that
of it.
I think very, very few people have read it because it's very hard to read this book.
Well, I think very few people have read it, even in the theory general. He's more quoted than someone that was
and
reading
then
it directly.
also what happens with Keynes is that people don't realize that he was representing his country in the United
Bretton
Nations
Woods.
and want to impose the views, the British view and British position of the economy. So also there is the academic and some kind of his political role, and you need to distinguish. You cannot attribute to him all what he was saying when he was acting as a politician, or he was commanded by Britain to defend the British interest. So okay, and of course, what I found that damaging, it was there's no reason to. Well, I mean, he has his own sexual orientations, and these were other times, so this has nothing to do with the academics. So I don't understand why Seifeland brings this up.
Yeah, well, anyway, that to say that someone who is like an expert on Bitcoin, and still it will strike me as very ideological, which you don't, not just because you respect intellectually Keynes, but I think that you don't have that bias. You are not here because you are a staunch libertarian. Maybe you have some libertarian leanings. I don't know that, but it doesn't strike me as obvious. So it's and then well, I will listen to you a bit like more carefully because you have like more the historian outlook and so on. And when it comes to this thing of the Bitcoin halving, is I think you look it not as much as something that it is necessary because of the course of history or something like that, but rather because of the mathematical properties, because you have studied how the bubbles worked in the past, and they have reproduced at a certain pace, and probably this is doing like a sort of sigmoid, and that kind of exponential growth in which we are with peppered with bubbles every x whatever time that may be.
No, you're absolutely right. There is a technical explanation of what is happening, and I think the problem is that the mainframe economists are missing this technical explanation, and it's quite natural why they are missing this. And the reason is that it's not in their books. It's the first time that you see the emergence of a monetary system. It hasn't happened before. Never before we have had just money that appears spontaneously. In biology, they have this type of thing. We can have a virus that appears spontaneously, as like we have now, right? This has happened, and in history, there are a lot of epidemics that are like this. But in economy and monetary theory, is really the first time that this happened. And this I found, this is extraordinary. It's very interesting to study. It's like a new animal that appears somewhere, or then if you're a biologist, you want to study that. Yeah. You don't want to negate that it exists. And this is what the economists have done. No, it's not possible. We have never seen that. I negate that it exists. And of course, I see a bubble. This is a tulip bubble. come on, don't be so superficial. Look at this in a bit of detail, and then you realize that is more subtle than what you think. And also, I think that they have another bias that you are quite right to point out about the technical part, is that what I find a bit uncomfortable in the economy books is that there is a mixture of ideology, and you have different economic schools that are indeed are ideological schools. Now, of course, economic science is not really a pure science, and what is the optimal solution for something may depend on your goals. And this can, there could be some right-wing or left-wing goals, and it may change what you prefer as the outcome. But there are some truths that are just technical, empirical, and universal, and these are science, and they should agree on that, and they don't agree on that.
Well,
and then they have their own ideological view, and they look at everything through this prism. So if one school places itself on that view, the other is against, and and essentially there is this neoliberal school and all this Chicago economic school that has failed in their theory. I mean, not only has failed in the economic theory, but in the market, in the financial market. I mean, I also like to read a lot people that really invest their money on the market, because I believe that they have a much better understanding of what is going on. And a book that I would recommend is Riemann's book, is Contrarian Investment, and he exposes all the failures of this Chicago school. So starting with the fact that the perfect market theory that is flawed, right? And and the proof is that there are traders that exploit the market, and you can have a feeling of that also in Schwager's books. Schwager has a series of books about interviews of famous traders, and not so famous but important, but traders that have made a living and beat the market for a long time, and it's very interesting to read these interviews.
Contrarian investment, you said. Contrarian investment is
this is the book of Riemann. Contrarian investment.
It was the question that I wanted to ask you to close, but I will just note it down. Drummond, Contrarian Investment, fine.
Yes, and then there are the Schwager books that is Market Wizards. There are 2 or 3 volumes. I read this long time ago, and I like it very much. So you see, someone that I like very much is Ed Thorp, for example. Ed Thorp is a mathematician, and he has an approach to the market and to economy that is very scientific, and at the same time, I'm sure he became famous just analyzing blackjack and devising the beat the dealer strategy, beat the casino, and there is no political ideology on what he does. I mean, there is no reason to have if you put political ideology, you get it wrong. No, of course, everyone has his own political ideology.
Yeah, this is the thing that I see, that there are libertarians that are for it, and maybe Krugmans and Uriels and all these guys are against also by ideological reasons. It may not be just that they are wrong, it's just that they don't like the idea of someone else controlling what used to be like controlled by governments.
The New York Times without just writing what the banks want to
central bank
here. I mean, this is exactly what happened here in Spain, in El País, in the economy section. I asked to write in the economy section because I saw all these papers that were just technologically wrong, and they didn't allow me to write in the economy section. In the economy section, they present only the view that the banks want you to have, and I knew that. I knew that beforehand. I remember a long time ago, even years before, where they were writing articles about gold, that gold was not a good store of value in the sense that it didn't give dividends, etc. It was at the time that all the European central banks were selling their gold, and in Spain also. They were selling their gold at a fraction, a very small fraction of what it's worth now. And it was at the moment of the euro. You know, they had this international, they agreed to sell a big part of the gold reserves, and in a very opaque way also, because I tried to find out in the reports of the Banco de España, the Spanish central bank, where the gold went, who did buy this gold, and what kind of gold did they sell, and it's impossible to find this information. That I think is a basic fundamental information, because this is the treasury of the people, of the nation.
Absolutely.
And it's completely opaque. So I think it's the same for in all the other countries. When you see the opacity of central banks about their reserves, you become very nervous about the soundness of the
At least it should be available exposed, so to say, right? What they did, maybe they could say that we don't want to disclose what we are going to do or something for good reasons.
Yeah, but you can try to investigate. We don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. Journalists haven't looked at this, or they were not allowed to publish that. It's very strange. It's very strange. I mean, because you know, any type of expense, public expense, you need to have records. You need to know in the national budget, you know, where the money goes, etc. And this was a huge amount of money in gold that just was sold, and nobody knows to whom, where it went, at what price. I mean, kind of crazy. So this is another reason to
well, if you are paranoid, then you will ask a lot of questions. I'm not saying you are. I mean, say, like, hypothetically, if you are like, well, we should all be a bit suspicious about governments doing opaque stuff. You know, this is...
Look, I'm not paranoid, but I wanted to know for practical reasons, for trading reasons. So other people that wanted to know, for example, is the National Spanish Numismatic Association. They wanted to know. They know that the Spanish central bank has some gold reserves in coins. There are some sort of coins, gold coins, that are very valuable because they are very scarce. So, for instance, there is a 25 peseta coin of gold that Alfonsina is called, that you know, was coined at the last part of the 19th century. It was worth 25 pesetas, and it contains more gold than a sovereign. So, well, it's a you know, at the time there was some type of monetary union made by gold. There was the Napoleon, the French Napoleon, and there was the Vreneli, the Swiss Vrenelis, and all these coins have the same weight of gold. In Britain, it was a bit different. The sovereign have more gold on it, but this you could travel to another country with a Napoleon and pay with Napoleon's.
But Spain was this is which
Latin Union. It was called the Latin Monetary Union, because it was a union by gold, right? And so indeed, the Spanish numismaticians, they are worried that some of these coins that are worth a lot, they suspect that maybe in the Spanish central bank reserves, they may have many of these coins. So indeed, they were overpaying the rarity because it's not rare. So they asked the Spanish central bank many years ago. Yeah.
I also like the fact that you are into numismatics. You know,
mine is bigger.
Well, yeah, yours is much bigger. But they see, I was into numismatics as a teenager. You know, when other kids were picking girls in pubs, I was picking coins in the Plaza Real.
Plaza Real every Sunday, Real. Right?
Exact. So that's how I ended up here. You know, that's Yeah, but this is interesting. But Spain would never belong to the Latin Union, but they never officially applied the gold standard.
No,
The Banco de
but
España.
yeah, no, it was, I think, well, I mean, it was an agreement to coin to have the same type of weight coins, but well, even if it was not, the Spanish Alfonsina 25 pesetas was the corresponding point, the corresponding coin to the Napoleon. I mean, the reference coin was the French Napoleon. During the 19th century, the French central bank was the main bank where the exchange of gold that fixed the price of gold.
Okay, so a bit what the US would do later, more than 100 years later, when they set up the standard with gold, and only dollars were linked to the gold standard, right? So yeah, and then how did you get into numismatics? Is it something going on in the family? In my case, it was my grandfather who started it.
I think this is the reason. Indeed, I inherit a collection of coins from the brother of my grandfather, and well, I mean, it's a not very valuable collection, but these are just coins that are kind of not well preserved. They were just in a bag, you know. If you make if you are a good
It's a
numismatic
similar.
collector, you
Most of what I got are like that, you know. See, my grandfather did the war, and he had gold coins, you know, that he kept like at home or in a safe at times, and I think he had I mean, he was from a bit of a wealthy family and had to escape. He had relatives that were killed by Checas, that kind of thing in Barcelona, and
oh,
I.
you know, the grandfather from which I inherited this collection, he was also in a Checa in Barcelona. But then his brother, that was my grandfather, that indeed my grandfather died in the defense of Madrid. He was a captain in the Republican Army, and well, I mean, but he died in Madrid, and this is why they took him to the Checa. Well, I mean, they had to solve the.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well,
was
interesting. Well, it's this time was like too interesting. Maybe there's my the brother of my grandfather. Apparently, I think he was like a phalangist, like a kind of he belonged to the party or something. And then by association, my grandfather, who was not very political, they probably presumed that he was because family were or something, and he had to
the
escape.
story of the Spanish Civil War is terrible. I mean, they of course they associated if one member of your family was from one side, they associated the other.
Yeah, and the thing is that my grandfather, I knew him well, and he told me like when the republic was proclaimed, he was happy and he was like going to the streets, and his family, who was family a bit of money, they were like trying to chastise him and so on. But like eventually, you know, at the end, and he just escaped to rejoin the national side. He went into he smuggled himself into a boat to Marseille, and I think he
Uh-huh.
was carrying some gold. And I
He's
think he
from Barcelona. He
from
left from
Barcelona
Barcelona.
to Marseille like 19 July 1936, and I think you know that there's like something like people in the U.S. sometimes says about weapons that it's better to have them and not need them than not having and needing them. He preserved a bit that for gold, and he always had some gold, some
Well,
quantity of
you know,
gold.
there is. I like to read a lot about what happened in the Spanish Civil War because of the history of my grandfather. I have some of letters of his friends, of his soldiers, etc. And I like to read a little bit. Indeed, my mother, she was very young. She was 5 years old. She was, and my grandmother, they were in Guernica when there was the the, the bombardment in
Oh,
Guernica,
yeah, so you have
and
a Basque.
they survived. They survived. My uncle also was there, so he was 10 years old. My uncle, and I just recall an history that I read. So you know, in Guernica, it was the first. I mean, the Spanish Civil War was kind of a training
Testing
camp
ground, yeah.
for the Second World War. And in Guernica, it was the first bombardment with napalm. So these were bombs of napalm that just burned everything. And there was the story that I can't find the reference probably, of a family that got his house completely destroyed, completely burned. And they had a gold coin in the foot of a table.
Mm.
And then the father returned to the ruins of the home, was able to find the coin, and thanks to this gold coin, they could rebuild themselves. Gold can be very important in these situations. And the first thing in a situation of war that the government does is to confiscate gold. And the Republican side did it, the Frankist side did it. In France, when then the Nazi occupation, they confiscated gold, but everyone that had gold could eat. I mean, there was a secondary market, I mean, a dark market where you could pay on gold. And indeed, the Napoleon was worth a lot during the Nazi occupation. Gold has been very important to many people during wartime. And the reason is that it's good, it's hard money, it's good money in all situations, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's what I mean, and it's we will come to that. But you made this observation in Juan's podcast that Bitcoin seems to be at the same time black swan that goes out of a mailing list of cyberpunks and so on. The thing is it when it's about major things, it's often like that, you know. It will not be the expert, because that's a bit of Feyerabend that I've been reading recently. The expert normally thinks inside of the box. He's an expert because of that, you know. And then you need sometimes the dilettante or to come and shake up things, etc. Taleb also says these things, and then it's also anti-fragile because it has these properties that well, you I would like to do with you some what Robert Fry in Real World Risk Institute calls Gedankenerfahrung. That is this German word that is a thought experiment, and he makes one of the Romers and Stayers. I would like to do some with you, but that if you try to break Bitcoin and like most of the reasons that people are giving for Bitcoin to fail, well, you try to project those scenarios, and really it's not so easy to come up with a plausible narrative for that, because Bitcoin may be
No, I
anti-fragile.
mean, I think it's very important to think about all the negative points and all the points of failure of Bitcoin. And I can tell you that in this Bitcoin talk forum, people were analyzing this at length during many years from the beginning.
I can guess, but I was not there, so I cannot. I can only guess.
Oh, you can see the forum. Indeed, if you go to Bitcoin Talk, you can see the first Satoshi post. I mean, nothing
It's there. It's all there.
Nothing is there. Yeah, and there are very interesting discussions. So precisely, I mean, Satoshi himself was very worried at the moment where WikiLeaks was. They closed the bank accounts of WikiLeaks, so people couldn't give funding to WikiLeaks through the wire transfers to banks. You know, this was at the time that, of course, WikiLeaks just leaked all the confidential information of the U.S. government, and then the only way to support WikiLeaks was through Bitcoin donation.
But he was worried that it was too soon, right? I mean that
right.
that it could give like too much exposure.
Yeah, that he worries that we may get too early exposure at a time where they could attack the network. And of course, people have been thinking, this is just an example, but people have been thinking of all the vectors of attack that and all the vectors of failure that Bitcoin can have. And at the beginning, there were some bugs. I mean, there were some new versions that were incompatible and created a fork during several blocks. The people then had to to come back to the original point and reinitiate the blockchain. So of course it's natural with a project like this, and it's very sensitive because you can a small bug can create a fork and a problem, but at the same time it's very robust and anti-fragile because there is always a way of recovery. I mean, the
No, I
blockchain
think
is
that there was in this Bitcash fork, no, that is, I think, the main fork that has been in Bitcoin, that there was like a dispute about the size
yeah,
of the
it was
token.
a legitimate fork, I would say, because there was a different view of what the next level for of the technology should be. But before that, what I'm talking were forks that were accidental. That was just a new version that was incompatible with a previous one. And even at some point there was a problem with the reason that in Bitcoin is the first programmable currency. So you have small contracts in Bitcoin, but very early on, there was some people that exploited the script that you put in the transactions just to create fake bitcoins, right? So then it was decided that the number of instructions that you can allow in a Bitcoin transaction is very limited. So people did limit in purpose the smart contract capabilities of Bitcoin just to improve the Bitcoin security, which at the time made sense. I mean, but well, I mean, maybe now you could relax. Well, over the time they have been relaxing these instructions, but you should keep it simple. Okay, keep it simple, stupid, because if you try to make something too
Too
sophisticated,
complex, there are too
then
many vectors.
there is a risk. You introduce a risk, and it's very important for some money to not have these risks.
One of
So there are
the
risks associated to the technology itself, and there are risks associated to the government, to the economic policies of the governments and the international economic policies. This is a competition between currencies. Of
hmm.
course, the central banks, they don't, at this early stage, they didn't believe on the competition. Now they start to worry a little bit.
But
It's amazing to see
that's
the
the
Europe,
thought
Europe.
experiment that I would like to do with you, because I mean, in this real world risk institute, there are guys who have traded Bitcoin. There are guys there that say that there are more 10% net worth Bitcoin and things like that, and that really, follow up, and they do technical analysis, things, people that are really like impressive, so to say. But I was trying to do this kind of thought experiment, and they were not playing ball, and maybe I will get more lucky with you. It says, for instance, I know that in Greece in 2015, because you say like there are risks for the economic situation, there are also maybe opportunities. And when there was the Greece referendum about the bailout in 2015, I don't know the details. I said I should dig into that more, but I think that the finance minister Varoufakis, he had like a plan B, so to say, that involved at least crypto. I don't know if it was Bitcoin. I don't know how serious that was. Probably that was too late. If 2012 was too late to link that too soon. Sorry, to link Bitcoin to WikiLeaks. 2015 for hyper Bitcoinization. That is also some of the terms that are out there, and that you yourself have used in some of your interviews, etc., was probably too soon. But what if Greece had they commissioned all the money that all the cash that they could get, the euros, and they had converted to Bitcoin, and they have tried to peg the new currency to Bitcoin or something like that? Today it would seem like probably that was a reasonable thing to have done, right?
Well, I mean, they didn't allow them even to get out of the euro system. I mean, it's very instructive, the Greek situation, what happened and what is still happening. There is not total bank freedom in Greece. Before Greece, there was Cyprus. You remember Cyprus?
Yeah, they put a limit on the deposits that they.
Not only they put a limit, they did confiscate all the money above 100,000 euros, and there were many businesses, many companies that had their accounting in Cyprus. But of course, Cyprus was small, so kind of people didn't. Well, I mean, the media don't talk about this, and the media don't present really the situation that happened. It's very instructive to read Varoufakis, that who explains that how he had to deal with the
Troika,
the black man from the European Central Bank, and the.
Well, he's very good. I don't know how reliable, but he has a good story.
Varoufakis is good. I mean, he's indeed also he has a nice book on game theory. He's an economist that also understands game theory, and he was playing the situation right. What you realize is that, okay, so of course people assume that we live in free countries, and which when you compare to other countries, or you compare to another periods of time, is probably true, but the fact that the European Union centralizes the money in the euro, it means that the countries do not have the freedom to adjust their monetary policies.
Well, of course.
Which has been always a resource.
Paul Krugman would agree with that.
Sorry?
Paul Krugman would agree with that. Even Paul Krugman would agree with that.
No. Paul Krugman in the US is the same thing. I mean, they don't allow people to create their own money. They don't allow people to coin silver coins or gold coins. I mean, even the Casasius coin. You know the Casasius coins?
I don't know about
it. Was just okay. The Casasius was a nice experiment. They are worth a lot. These Casasius coins. Is a coin with bitcoins inside. You have the secret key inside. You have to peel it.
Well, I'll tell you
but the guy that was producing these Casasius coins, he was prosecuted.
I don't know. I don't know if you know this, but I think there was Roger Dubuis who made a watch with a crypto wallet. You heard about that, or you don't even?
Sorry,
Roger Dubuis, Swiss watch. I'm not personally very interested into watch manufacturing, but I work on that. Okay, so right now I'm doing consultancy, and I work. I mean, a guy who pays my wages like a Swiss watch manufacturer, and they did like 1 or 2 years ago a special edition, very limited edition, kind of I don't know, 20 watches or something like that of a Roger Dubuis watch with like integrated crypto wallet. Bitcoin wallet, and it was worth, I don't know if it's 10,000 or 20,000. I didn't buy it, but I was like, thinking like, hey, this may be a collector item, like, as I like in numismatic, this may get like
become really, really, really expensive.
Even if Bitcoin fails, it will be like a kind of a paraphernalia of an era.
I have just here, by chance, I have a coin. Can you see this coin?
I can, yeah. Bitcoin. Yeah, B. Tell us about it.
There's a QR code there. This coin was coined it's a commemorative coin when Bitcoin was worth, when an ounce of silver was worth a quarter of Bitcoin. So 0.25 Bitcoins were worth an ounce of silver. So this is an ounce of pure silver.
Wow.
And these coins were coined in 2013. And indeed, all these collector items, they are worth a lot. I mean, of course, 1 ounce of silver is $27, $28. But these are unique. There were very few very few coins of this kind that were
Yeah, that's the
issued.
interesting thing that I wanted to tell you, that you said that the Bitcoin is both black swan, it's anti-fragile. It may be Lindy. The Lindy is very difficult to assess,
No, it's
but
not yet Lindy. Not yet Lindy.
okay, gold is
Compared to
Lindy.
gold, is no
Gold is
Lindy
Lindy.
at
You
all.
were talking about gold, and I wanted to gold is Lindy.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is, like said, more Lindy than I don't know, Dogecoin, right? But
Oh,
because I think,
Dogecoin is quite Lindy, yeah.
okay,
But
but no,
Dogecoin is more Lindy,
it's near
than
Elon.
Ethereum.
It's near Elon, and some of the questions that I had noted down that I wanted to talk to you, maybe we'll come to that. But anyway, that these. Yeah, I wanted to tell you this is just an anecdote. My sister is decorating all her apartment with, just not. She didn't do this like with a banker mindset, okay? But she has decorated all her apartment with collector items, from
From
like
Bitcoin,
no,
from
no, no,
cryptocurrency.
no, no, collector items, like just furniture, pieces of furniture.
All
Okay,
right,
so
all right.
so she like a 60s vintage lamp and things like that, and
Yes.
she doesn't buy new furniture. She has the luck that she doesn't need to go to IKEA to put furniture. She's into furniture, and she always picks like collector items from the web and etc. And she's like, she picked like a lamp that it was like 600 euro or something like that a few years ago. Then she put it there. No one paid any compliment nor any attention to the lamp, and now she grew tired of it because she likes the positive feedback from friends and so on. And she's like, one of her less preferred items of furniture. She puts it again on the market, and then someone, like, without any bargaining, offers 650 euros. So at the end, it's like she's like furnishing her apartment with her. I mean, this may be like not always the case, of course, but she's at the end, you are furnishing your apartment. You go Lindy, and it's less expensive
Well,
than.
the collection market is very important. I mean, well, people know about the art market where there are auctions, etc. But it's a very curious market because some items can become very valuable for different reasons. I mean, you see this in numismatics, but you have this also in paintings. And I mean, I remember in Paris, for example, in Drouot, there are these big auctions where I like to go there because it's kind of a museum. You go there and you have auctions of there you have furniture, you have jewels, you have gold, you have paintings, and sometimes you see some stuff that nobody wants. I mean, you have a painting of the 19th century, and you can have it for 15 euros. I mean, and okay, so the and then you can buy these things, and they can become very expensive. So this is how they run their business, the antiquaries. But it's very psychological. One of the nice things about value is that price is not the same as value, and value is something psychological. So
Well,
the good trader, what he does is that he makes an arbitrage between two people that give different values to the same item. Okay,
yeah.
this is the
Well,
point, is that
that's the
there's a lot
thing.
of
There's this
psychology
all
behind.
this GameStop saga that we are witnessing and all that. It's kind of it's expressing itself, or Dogecoin might be an example. Something that Bitcoin also. Then that that there was this guy that I like his newsletter that is called Matt Levin, and he was like very interested into GameStop, and he has been writing about it for weeks. And it's like, well, you can entertain as a thought experiment that people would start buying GameStop for no reason, and then GameStop becomes like a sort of new gold standard. He was
I mean,
saying this
I,
as.
I, I like very much this dynamic. There are trolling Wall Street. I mean, there are trolls of Wall Street. Bitcoiners, we are
Yeah.
trolls of central banks.
Yeah,
we are trolling the monetary system,
exact.
which is a
But this
bigger
is the thing that I find interesting, because I mean, as much as I like this guy Matt Levin, who is like a Bloomberg analyst who used to work for Goldman Sachs, I think he's slightly bothered by it, you know. And I've seen other like traders, like kind of insiders of the market, that are slightly bothered by these things that maybe, I don't know, maybe they won't say openly, but because it attacks also the fundamental premise, you know, that there is a technical analysis and that values are like determined by cash flows and things like that, you know. And then they seem to be slightly bothered. But now if we come to that, like, I mean, it seems a bit absurd, and now that GameStop is going down, he's kind of tweeting or like writing about it as well, that for which GameStop or even Tesla don't seem to me as good a new gold standard as Bitcoin, because of Bitcoin design making more sense. Also, the fact that Bitcoin is more abstract is, at the end, Tesla or GameStop are supposed to be companies that are selling products and that they have to generate some revenue. Now, for Bitcoin, because that's not the case, and you made this parallel between palladium and gold, and say, like, actually, I prefer that gold doesn't have an industrial use as palladium does. Both are gold. Both gold and palladium are rare metals, but gold makes a superior gold standard because there is not an industrial use for it. So it's not pegged to the automotive industry. I could say the same thing, like, okay, there is a Tesla bubble, there is a Bitcoin bubble. But Tesla is more obviously, they are supposed to be a company that's selling cars. And they do sell cars. They do sell more cars than Seat now. But still, they don't sell more cars than Seat, BMW, whatever, Mercedes, GM, and Fiat all combined, right? So I mean, I don't know if it's a bubble or not. I suppose that it just seems more of a bubble to me, because I don't think that people will just keep buying Tesla for just the reason that they award Tesla like as a new gold standard, whereas for the Bitcoin, it seems to me less absurd, right?
Yeah, well, what happens is there's a big difference. I mean, it's hard to compare Bitcoin with Tesla, something in the stock market, because at the end, the companies in the stock market are producing something. So there's some fundamental analysis that can be done about the output of these companies. In this sense, Bitcoin is more similar to a commodity, but also is a currency, right? And now, for the price, there is certainly a lot of psychological stuff involved. Apple, for example, has been on a run for years, and it has a sort of very adept clients that will pay for the same technology um, 30-40% more, just because it has the Apple logo, right? And also, well, you know, it's not just the Apple logo. It's also some characteristics, some aesthetics, etc. That is, after all, is not the main purpose. Now, is what I was telling you before, is that the reason for value is subjective, and so for people can be attracted by some characteristics of or some ideas or projects that Tesla, so Elon Musk, he wants to go to Mars, right?
Yes.
I mean, represent.
It's more obvious for collector items than it is for stocks. But now it's that's what it becomes a bit fascinating when you like increase the pool of investors, and then
But
people buy for reasons just because they like it. They buy Tesla just
have
because
you
they like Elon.
have you look at what is happening now with DeFi, decentralized finance?
No.
You have a crazy world where you can put your money and it's going to give you a 1,000% interest rate over a year. I mean, of course, it decreases, it changes. It's very risky. There are some coins or some tokens that are used. Well, essentially, decentralized finance is about. I mean, there is something serious behind. Is that you want to replicate many of the structures of classical finance in a decentralized way. So the first thing is AMMs, AMNs are automated market makers. So you can buy and sell a pair of coins between them without having a classical bid offer list, you know. So how it works is just you have a someone provides liquidity. So you want, for example, to exchange a token in the Ethereum network with another token, a token A with token B in the Ethereum network, and you provide two amounts of liquidity, and then you buy and you sell, but with a smart contract that is just a transaction on the Ethereum network. That, let's say that you want to buy token A just by selling token B. So you just send your transaction, and the smart contract just automatically will send you back the token A and keep the token B and update the price so that the product is stable, is constant. Now this type of thing needs the people to provide liquidity. So you need someone to provide token A and token B, and it creates a crazy economy where the volatility is huge. It's all about tokens in the Ethereum network, and for example also the Binance Smart Chain network, where these are networks where you can write a smart contract. They are not very decentralized, but they are models. You could make over the years it would be made something really decentralized. Now you realize that the prices of these tokens have nothing to do with reality. I mean, so you know, for example, there was just 2 days ago there was a coin that came out that's called SafePal. SafePal is a hardware wallet, the company that makes hardware wallets, and they decided to issue their own coin that they are going to use for promoting the SafePal and also for the operations of the hardware wallet. And there was an auction in Binance, which is one of these exchanges with plenty of tokens, and so you could purchase. Well, there were some conditions. You need to have some BNB that are tokens in Binance tokens, and then there was some kind of bid for the tokens. Well, I mean, the thing that happened is that you at the end you could buy these tokens for 20 cents, and in a couple of hours they were worth more than $6. Then they went down, right? But it's the same that when people were launching at the beginning new coins. They were launching new coins, and it wasn't clear what was the value. So people just started mining these coins, and there was a lot of hash rate put in these coins, and then you know, is all right. So what I mean is that the psychology of the project, the ICOs craze on 2017, 2018 was like this also. People were proposing a project, and people were buying the tokens associated to this project that were used to found the project and the developers. Now people buy the idea, and of course it's very speculative, but there is a big amount of value in the ideas. Sometimes the ideas are fake, and you can find out that they are fake or they are not realistic. Most of these ICOs ideas were not really realistic. So it's in the part of the imaginarium of people. When people okay, so you focus on what you understand, but if you don't understand the technology, you focus on the ideas, what they promise.
You think this will happen eventually, like tokenization of companies, or only for some niches? I will give you an example, because I have a good friend. I'm an industrial engineer by trade, so I'm in IT, and I have a friend. I was in solar, and I have a friend who stayed there, and he has this like very good startup. I mean, socially good. Like they do like solar farms in Africa, and they are looking for investors. And I say, like, you know, and they are not an NGO. Okay, so they say, like, actually. there are NGOs like Ingenieros Sin Fronteras or Engineers Without Borders or whatever it is the English name, that say they dump our business. They are doing dumping, like, you know, they go there and they install something or something. And we are trying to do something like, you know, with communities, and like it's interesting to them. They propose whatever they propose, like all kind of electric appliances that are direct consumption, so that they don't need to do alternate current and things like that. You know, they propose a whole package so that it makes less money. But then there are other guys who are the NGOs and go, it's like, say like, okay, if you could tokenize these, maybe there would be people buying shares. I may do that just because I like the project. You know,
Well,
so
well, I
these
mean,
companies.
there are already tokenized projects like this. With,
Yes, but it's there will be some. But I mean, do you think that this will like become like the industry standard someday, or
now the question is the project that I know, some of these projects, they have a token, but it's not clear that the token is useful. It's just for marketing. Okay, so most of the, I would say that 99% of the token projects that you heard about, yes.
Actually, I did a startup in 2017, and it was like a sort of, let's put it simple terms, social network for cooks. And I talked to some people that were like, I mean, connected to business angels or to some business angels, and some were saying me, is this somehow connected to Bitcoin? Can you connect this with, you know, that can you allow Bitcoin payments, so you just can make your
Well,
pitch and
your
say that
mistake
there
was
is.
not to, you should have made an ICO, and then if you make an ICO with the proper marketing, you have all these venture capital, or all these VC millions that will pour into your token.
I see. The thing is, I I was not interested in crypto at that time, you know, so I just missed
No,
that
but
train.
this kind of craziness. Well, I think it's similar to what we did live in the dot-com bubble. You know, in the dot-com bubble, I mean, in some sense, at the time I was living in the United States. In the academic world, I think it was perceived differently. So, I mean, for you to have an idea, when I first went, I did a study in France, and I studied in the École Normale Supérieure. This was in year 1987. And
I'm interested to that. So you went directly to France, from Barcelona to France, or you were on a scholarship, or?
well, indeed, I got a scholarship. I mean, what happened is that I did study in the Lycée Français
Okay.
in Barcelona, which is a very good, at the time it was, and I think it still is,
I think it's
was a
still
very good
today. It
school.
has a good reputation. Yeah.
My mother was inspectors of high schools, right? So he knew that the Lycée Français was working very well, and also the reason is a public French school, which is private for Spanish students. I mean, they have to pay. For French people, it was free, but they have very good teachers. I mean, in order to get a position in one of these lycées français in the étranger, in a foreign country, you need to have some experience, and most of the people prefer to be in Barcelona or Madrid that were near France, you know. So I remember to have had very good professors at the Lycée Français Barcelona. And at the time, well, I mean, I got involved in the mathematical Olympiad, and I won the Spanish mathematical Olympiad, and then I went to the international.
So, for instance, you did a French bac or a Spanish selectividad?
I did a French baccalaureate. Then I also did the selectividad at the time, just the entrance exam for the Spanish university, and then the proviseur of the Lycée Français. Well, he proposed to ask for a scholarship for me to study in France, and well, I have to thank him, because he succeeded in having me a very small scholarship for studying in class préparatoire. You know, in France there are two systems.
No, I did class prepare myself.
Oh,
I,
okay. Maybe
I studied in
maybe for
half,
for
half and half. I was like a class prepa, then I came back to Barcelona. Then I ended up in Min Paris, also with some scholarships.
I see. And why did you study in France? You were studying a lycée français before, or?
No, just I got a scholarship to go to Rouen, and it was like they were looking for international students. They came to our I was in the Institut Montserrat, and they came to
Oh,
the place,
know
and
that
they
my mother was professor in Instituto Montserrat.
I didn't know
She
what's
did
her name.
study there. She did study there when she was young, very young.
I don't think I had her as a professor, but what's her
No,
name
but
is.
I think he was teaching there just at the beginning, at some period. You know,
It was girls only, I think, at the beginning.
yeah. So, but well, when she studied was, it was in the 50s maybe,
Mm.
and then she did Filosofía and Letras, history in Madrid, and then she was a high school teacher of history, and then she became an inspector of high schools, and then she returned to teach in Barcelona because she was an inspector in Madrid. And when she returned to teach in Barcelona, I think the first teaching she did was in Instituto Montserrat, that she kind of liked it because it was there that she studied.
I was there
And
in the 90s. It was near home.
so, well, but then she did stay a couple of years. Then she moved to the other high school in San Andreu, I think. Well, I don't remember. But so my history is that I just got this fellowship to study in France. That was nice because I could become independent. It was very little fellowship, but it paid for my internat. And I went to study to Lycée Louis-le-Grand in Paris, which is a very good preparatory.
Well, very famous.
There also I had very good professors. And then, so usually preparatory classes, you prepare these entrance examinations for engineering school mostly, but also there are the École Normale that is for research. So I did enter 2 years later in the École Normale Supérieure.
You got French citizenship eventually, or
Well,
you're double national?
that was interesting at the time because I wasn't paid in the École Normale. I mean, usually the French students that enter in the École Normale through the examination, as I did, they became public employees and they receive a salary.
No.
And because I was Spanish, and at the time Spain was inside the European Union, but because I was Spanish, I couldn't get one. And what was worse, my small fellowship ended up. And then so I kind of struggled during a few months because I didn't have any type of income. My professors at the preparatoire were very nice. They offered me to do some oral examinations so that I can survive. And after some months, I got a fellowship to study in the École Normale. So this is a little bit my student trajectory. At the same time, when I went to Paris, at the time I didn't know if I wanted to study mathematics or physics, so I did enroll on the physics faculty in Barcelona, and indeed I have I finished the degree of theoretical physics in Barcelona, but I just passed the examination. In class préparatoire, the first 2 years, so you know that, but I tell for people that
Yeah.
the first 2 years is mathematics and physics, and you get a very solid formation. I mean, I think very solid background on mathematics and physics. And then in the École Normale, in the first year, I did mathematics and physics also at the same time. So, and then on the second year, because I wasn't French at the time, one solution they proposed me is to become French so that I could get paid. But at the time, it was a bit complicated because I was supposed to do the Spanish military service, and I was delaying this with
prórrogas,
being a student, you could delay your incorporation to the army, and but the army didn't allow me to take another nationality. It was very risky because if I could become French, but the Spanish army will not recognize my French citizenship and will force me to do the Spanish military service. Okay, so I finally did avoid to do any military service because after some times of residency in a foreign country, you don't have to do it, but it was some years later. And then, I started to work after. Well, I did my PhD quite quickly. I could say that I was lucky that my PhD advisor, which was Jean-Christophe Yocos, who got later the Fields Medal. He's an expert in dynamical system. He was a student of Michel Arman, which was kind of the father of the modern dynamical system school in France. And Raphaël Douadi was also a student of Michel Arman. He did his PhD with Michel Arman.
Yeah, Raphaël Douadi is friend of Nassim, and he's one of the instructors also. Well, one of the founders really of a Real World Risk Institute. For those who don't know.
This is why I am in the Real World Institute.
Okay, you are friends of Raphael before than Nassim.
Oh yeah, well, a lot of time before. I remember when I did my PhD.
Well, he's normal sup himself.
Yes, of course. He's normal sup as he was about the same generation than my PhD advisor, and at the time, I'm talking you. I was doing my PhD in '89. At the time, we were having the dynamical system seminar organized by Michel Arman, and there were all the students of Michel Arman, and Jean-Christophe Yocos and me. We were coming. So the Michel Arman seminar was taking place in the École Polytechnique, and we were in Université Paris Sud, which is nearby. So we will come every week together to the Michel Arman seminar. That was a seminar that usually took the whole day. We started in the morning, we had lunch, and then we did continue in the afternoon. And of course, Raphaël Douadi was there also. So it was kind of the same scientific family. So I did my PhD in Université Paris Sud, and I was lucky. I was lucky because he gave me a subject that. Well, he had some new techniques for one of the most fundamental problems in dynamics in the small divisor is the Ziegler linearization problem. And there was a question by Arnold, so he asked me to try to prove in some situations this Arnold conjecture. And yeah, I did this pretty soon. Indeed, when I did my master degree with him, I already proved some. Under some condition, I solved this Arnold. Arnold is a famous mathematician from the Russian school. He was a student of Kolmogorov, and then So then he asked me to try to prove in as many cases as possible this Arnold conjecture. But I found that my solution was pretty sharp, and indeed, I proved that the solution was sharp. So essentially, when the condition that I was assuming was not fulfilled, then the Arnold conjecture was false, which came like a surprise for the specialists. This is another example why sometimes when you are a student, you think a little bit out of the box, because all these people in dynamics were convinced that the Arnold conjecture was true, and I think that nobody was trying to disprove it. Everybody was trying to prove it. And because I was a bit ignorant of all the stuff surrounding this problem, I found it natural that it wasn't true.
La ignorancia es atrevida, they say. Ignorance is courage.
Yeah. So well, it was nice because it wasn't so nice because then when I found the solution, first Jean-Christophe didn't believe me. Then Michel Arman didn't believe me. So I had to explain them in detail what was my construction. And of course, mathematics is good that you can just you can really go into the details of the argument and very very precise writing of the proof. And so then, of course, it was correct. And thanks to this, I got my PhD, which I got very early on. So I was at the time in the third year in the École Normale. So usually it takes much longer. It took me just a few months after my master. So my PhD is just about 30 pages long. It's 32 pages long.
Not very long.
not very long, but then the result was important, and then, well, I mean, I spent one year as visitor in the Institut d'études scientifiques. This is a mathematical institute which is in the suburbs of Paris, and then I was hired at the CNRS, and then 3 or 4 years later, I was well. First, they invite me at UCLA to give a holomorphic dynamic course in '94, which also it was nice because I just arrived 1 week before the big earthquake in '94. That was a 7.8 earthquake, which was a fun experience. And then the year after that, they offered me a position to move to Los Angeles, to LA, and I went to LA. That it's a city that I like very much. I mean, it's
Really?
reminds me a little bit Barcelona. You know,
Oh,
one
really?
of the worst things of Paris is the worst things of Paris about the weather. You know, the weather in Paris is terrible. And,
Yeah, where the weather is more like LA, but the setting, like the architecture, the way that you move through the city, the
of course,
density.
yeah, architectural is different. It's different, but also there are other similarities. At the time when I was a kid, I think Barcelona was a very open city. It's no longer true now. I think it's a bit different. It's open, but in a different sense. I mean, people in Barcelona were coming from all parts of Spain. You know.
Now there are expats. It's like 20% or more of Barcelona population are foreigners, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, it
Now,
was not
also there's
like that
a
when I
different
was a
kind of
kid.
population. Yeah. In particular, for example, in the Villa Olímpica, my parents moved to the Villa Olímpica, and in this neighborhood, there are a lot of foreign neighbors. You know, people that, well, I mean, you know, people from the north, they like the beach. You know, so. But
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I mean, in one of the things that I like about LA is that it's a city where you don't feel foreigner. I mean, it's and at the time I had very good years there. I mean, my kids were born there, and I after the years I moved because my wife started to work in Madrid.
You are in Madrid right now, you told me.
Yeah, my kids are in Madrid. Then I divorced, but you know, I have my job in Paris. I have my kids in Madrid, and I have my mother in Barcelona. So this is why I commute.
Okay.
As you do, but a little bit more fun.
Yeah, well, this is just, you got French passport at the end, did you, or
No. I only
never?
have a Spanish passport. I mean,
Okay,
I got a
but
green
is it
card.
like you I mean, you didn't find it necessary, or is because I was
Yeah,
living in France for, and afterwards I was doing basically consultant for Airbus for a time, and we was living in Toulouse, and I could qualify. It was only 5 years, and you could
oh
qualify
no,
for
I
citizenship.
could
No?
have asked for a French passport, but I mean, indeed, once you are in the European Union and the borders are open,
Yeah. No,
you
it's
do
not for
anything.
practical reasons, but you know, when I was living there, it's just feeling like voting in the elections and that kind of stuff.
But,
Never,
you know,
never occurred to
I'm
you.
a public employee in France, so I qualify. I mean, I could have asked for French citizenship for a long
Long time
time, but
ago.
you know, there's just not use. The only use is that you have tend to renew two passports or something like that. I mean, kind of a headache, you know.
Ah, well, it's easy like a bit of hedging also. You know, if now we are stripped of a Spanish citizenship because in Barcelona you don't know about these things, at least you
Yeah,
have
but
a
then
French.
if you want to hedge, you take a passport from the Cayman Islands or something like
Maybe,
that.
maybe, or like Cyprus, they sell them. I think that they were selling like, I mean, they sell it like for 300,000 euros. I made the numbers because they crashed the numbers. They
Well, there
had
are
got
cheaper
like with
places.
this program like more than
I
30
have
million or something
a
like
friend that is a Bitcoiner that has studied this in depth,
that.
and there are some places that they offer passport for the whole family. You know.
Well, in Spain, you can get the golden visa if you invest more, I don't know, that 300,000 euros in the country, which sometimes it just implies buying an apartment. I had I was, when I was working for Airbus, I was a consultant for Infosys, which was an Indian company, and there were like Infosys partners who were interested in that and were asking me questions about it and all that. Anyway, coming back to Bitcoin, I just wanted to go back to this thought experiment I was telling you about. Like, I mean, could something like, I mean, 2015 was probably too early, but if Greece had hyper Bitcoinized at that point, it would have been like appropriate choice in retrospect, or it was not feasible, just it was a crazy plan, and they would having a revolt, I don't know, people not accepting that the euros are converted or pegged into a new currency pegged to you.
No, but I don't think the plan of Varoufakis. You are thinking about Greece, right?
Well, I'm thinking about Greece, but even if it was not feasible in 2015, I mean, just like, let's say Cuba, you know, which is also an interesting example for things like that. I mean, you are into what is good money or not. They had like two coins, right? They had like a peso and peso convertible, and eventually, you know, the all foreigners going there to. Have you ever been there as a
Cuba,
tourist?
no, I haven't. I have never been in
Well,
Cuba.
it's a curious thing because you go there as a tourist, and then you are not allowed to use pesos. That is the ones that, well, now it just changed on January, but
Oh yeah. Well,
you had to change at the border like your dollars or your euros for
oh,
convertibles.
there are other communist countries. I went to Poland at the time of the mathematical Olympiads, and then you could get an official exchange rate, and then for the dollar, and then a street exchange rate of the dollar.
Well, so I think Argentina has this kind of thing also where there is a black market and there is an official
No, but
rate, and the
you
official
see
rate is
what
much like, I mean, but they can only get up to some low amount of money, and they have to ask for permission to change at the official rate, and then they have to go to the black market. So, but in Cuba, like you had like, let's say, shitcoin, that was the peso, that was the one with the government was paying salaries, and then you have convertibles, that was the ones that when you arrived as a foreigner, you are supposed to change your dollars into convertibles, and they were like casino tokens, and then you are only supposed to change those. But it was, everything was more expensive into convertibles than it was in Cuban pesos.
no,
And at the end, it's like since they were possible to convert and the others not, everyone wanted convertibles also. It's like, it's a classic textbook example of good money displacing bad money. And now it's like they are moving into a single currency that is pegged to dollar. Like a convertible has, like, the peso has disappeared, and they are moving to convertibles only. And it's like, I mean, following this thought example, if they, instead of pegging their currency to that of their enemy, traditionally there's the dollar, they do against Bitcoin, and we presume, the thing is that Bitcoin is still very volatile and probably not a good currency for that purpose. But if we presume that Bitcoin will go to $400,000 in 20 years or something like that, that would be
no,
like, I mean, a first mover advantage, right? Like the first country doing
no,
something like that.
this movement has started in Venezuela. They use a lot of cryptocurrencies. They use Dash, they use Bitcoin
Yeah, but
because
it's
they
like
want to hedge.
bottom up, no? It's not the government. It's not like the
No,
government
it's not the
saying,
government. It's the people that want to hedge to inflation. Also in Argentina, but what happens traditionally in South America. I mean, I have been in. I mean, I know some parts of South America, like Brazil and Colombia, where I have lived some months. And for example, at the time I was living in Brazil, there was high inflation. So when I started, it was cheaper to be in an hotel than to rent an apartment. And just because if you stay 3 months in an hotel, they cannot increase arbitrarily the rate that they give you at the beginning. And for an apartment, they could increase the rent every month. Now, and people were kind of receiving their money and going to the supermarket just to spend it
Spend everything, yeah.
and freeze the food for the rest of the month. Now, in this country, there are more sensible about what it means good money and bad money that we are in Europe, because we have forgotten. I mean, in Spain it happened. We were talking about the Civil War. There was the money of the Republic that suddenly was worth nothing, and
my grandfather sold a Bugatti for 1,000 pesetas, after the war. So, like, just figure out it would be the equivalent of €6 or something like that. And that's the kind of thing that when he would explain, is like, I would like, cannot avoid like going a bit nuts. But
no, but this okay. Now you are asking about a government to take the step to have some reserves on Bitcoin, right?
Oh no,
Now,
even per Bitcoin. I mean, I would say like if you presume, and that's I mean,
they will
if
do
you
it, but
presume that the Bitcoin value would go up, I mean, if I knew that, I would exchange all my assets into Bitcoin right now. But that's too risky, right? But if
it's
a
not what they believe.
government would do that bet,
I mean, maybe I believe that, and you believe that, but not the central bankers do not believe that, because they cannot conceive that a currency that was created by cypherpunks on a mailing
okay, so
list.
you're still it's a mindset thing.
Of course, I mean, just look at Lagarde declarations, and now, at the beginning they were kind of amused by this, right? These tokens that were like these miles that the air companies give you, and Bitcoin, well, it's something similar. But then they got a bit worried, say, well, okay, no, Bitcoin is just the drug money, and what is interesting is the blockchain technology. These were the private banks that were going. The 2014, they were the champions of the blockchain technology. This was pure marketing. All they were having departments inside the banks where they were supposed to make some research on blockchain. And I remember at the time I did organize some events, a series of conferences about cryptocurrencies, and I invited people from banks to present what research they were doing. And in these talks, there were cryptographers, mathematicians, computer scientists. So I think it was pretty interesting, because it was one of the first conferences which were academic on Bitcoin, right? And they refused. No, they didn't send anyone. And the reason is that they weren't doing anything. They were just doing just marketing, and they were just talking about private blockchains and a consortium. Well, I mean, they had this supposed consortium, but this has nothing to do with blockchain. When you make a consortium, just a finite number of nodes where you allow certain banks to participate and not others, this is not decentralized. You don't need the blockchain technology. But the only thing you have is a database. And we keep telling them that this was not the technology about. But they didn't care about it. For them, it was marketing. It was nice to say that we had a forefront department on blockchain. And after 5 years, I mean, now 6 years later, there's nothing. There's nothing, you see? And well, this was the time they went kind of they wanted to appropriate the technology in that way, which could work with other types of technologies, like, for example, the instant payment technologies and things like that. But Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies was something that was out of their understanding. It's like Linux. I mean, the big movement of open software with Linux, of course. I mean, Microsoft was. I mean, at the beginning, was probably making jokes of the Linux operating system. I remember I used, when I was doing my PhD, I used Linux that did fit on a diskette, on a 1 megabyte diskette, and I did type my PhD with LaTeX, with tech in it. It was plain tech at the time. It's just you know what it is, but people that listen to us maybe don't
Oh,
know it.
yeah, I've
It's
used a
open
bit
source.
Linux at college, but I don't remember it. I mean, I mean,
So,
I've not
it
kept
was a time that
going.
you put your diskette on your PC, and then it booted, and you had a Linux prompt, and you could do a few things. Not even Windows. There were no Windows. I mean, at some time, then 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 they started there was X Windows that appeared for Linux, and then I remember you had to configure the screen just counting the number of pixels that you had. Well, but this was, I think, is a very good parallel of this development of Linux and Bitcoin, because it's open source. Also, there is a big concurrence which is commercial or from the state, and I don't think people did realize that something important is being built. Only the people that were in the technology, right? When you were in the technology, people are very passionate that
Yeah,
they.
yeah. Well, but I know that the Venezuelan government that you mentioned is studying crypto because, I mean, I don't know, for
Nah, but the
political
Venezuelan government
reasons.
is doing. They claim to have issued a petro
Yeah.
coin, but it's nothing. This is nonsense. It's
Yeah, but I mean, if we take the hard assumption, then maybe this is a risky one that Bitcoin will go up. Any country, if it's the small island of Grenada or something that would peg their currency to Bitcoin the first, I'm thinking like, well, top down. I know that there are people in Argentina that are mm, invested in Bitcoin, or in Brazil, and the thing is also that that if now Bitcoin is at historic heights, but a few months ago, when it was not regarding the dollar, regarding the previous bubble or cycle of 2017, it was at historic highs against Brazilian real. So for these people, it makes perfect sense to be in Bitcoin. But no, but for me the question is if the first, if when a government will do that, because I think they say that Harvard is buying Bitcoin, and there are institutions that are buying it right now, that maybe
the
Tesla
governments
is
only
buying
will do
Bitcoin.
that after the companies. What we are seeing now are the first companies that are putting some of their reserves in Bitcoin. So the first one that announced it is MicroStrategy, and then you have now Tesla
Tesla.
that is buying 1.5 billion of dollars of in Bitcoin, and many others will follow, because also for hedge funds,
Yeah,
the problem with.
it makes sense that it is first companies or hedge funds. But I would say like the first government that would do this, and if Bitcoin is not like thin air,
Yeah,
then
but which government?
they
Right now in Europe,
Oh, but
most governments.
the thing is that I know the establishment will not accept this, but there are
Mhm.
countries like we were saying, Cuba, where they don't need to worry about U.S. embargo, because they are already embargoed, so they are in a very convex situation to try something like this. And I'm just interested if it would make sense, or people like would get some Bitcoin and then they would hodl it, and then they would invent another shitcoin
Look,
to buy the bread or something. Or it's also like Bitcoin is you are working on something. I heard in the podcast that you were doing with Juan, that so that a layer, so that you can do many
oh,
transactions in Bitcoin, that
the
that is
Lightning
not.
Network. You are thinking about the Lightning Network, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if a
Now,
government takes
let
over,
me
and
address your
like
question.
the thing is, Cubans are maybe communists, but they are not stupid, and they take that and
Now,
develop the technology.
look. It's not just about technology or about economic soundness or monetary soundness. Uh, of course, I believe that most of the countries that will benefit from adopting Bitcoin or some cryptocurrency with the small fees, because right now Bitcoin has high fees. I mean, when at the moment where the network is collapsed, now someone has to decide this. The people that have to decide it are in power, the government. Okay, so if the currency is bad, it's because it's bad for the average people, but not in general for the people in power. I mean, they benefit from it. I mean, you could see this in Zimbabwe. I mean, Zimbabwe, there was this big inflation, and because the people in the government, they had no reason to change it. And what happened in Africa is that you have the system, the M-Pesa system. You know, people are paying, are using minutes of cell phone as payment. You know, but if you think to Venezuela, the people, I think the people in power benefit from the currency that is now, even if it's a currency is very inflationary. The actual system, they are in control and they benefit from it.
Well,
And in Cuba,
they are in
probably
control, and I don't expect the Cuban communists to try something that would put them out of control or something like that. Okay, I can
it has
understand
to
that,
be,
but I mean, see,
people
like
have,
if they were for the interest of the people, would it make sense that some country
well,
like
they are
within,
making here a huge assumption for the interest
yeah,
of the. I mean, you know, well, I mean, you could see this in our governments in Europe. I mean, when you see how they use, for example, in Spain, the pandemic of the COVID, you see that sometimes they are thinking more to their political agenda than to what is the interest of the community and the people. You know,
mm.
and
but
I think for the economy is similar.
would it be
There are
the
some
only
structures that are in
parameter
place.
is if Bitcoin is going up or down? I mean, if provided that Bitcoin is going up, then it would be a sound decision, or there are like technical barriers that are yet making, like
Now,
in that
okay,
you
of
cannot
course,
process as many transactions in
look
Bitcoin as.
to place a certain percentage of your national reserves on Bitcoin makes absolute sense because it's not correlated to other things. And even if it's volatile, if you just place 5%, 10% of your national reserves on
Like
Bitcoin,
Kelly, right?
yeah, I mean, I think you just for diversification reasons, I think it's a no-brainer move just to take some part of the Bitcoin market in your portfolio or in your national reserve. But it's not their main worry, I think. I mean, it's not their main goal. I mean, of course, there will be countries that will do that. And the first country
But that's
that
the
does
thing, that
this,
the first one doing it, it will have a first mover advantage if we presume,
total.
as you did. Like, I mean, you
But
are
then
certainly
it
of
will
the
be nice.
opinion that it is more likely
Yeah,
to go up than not.
but
I myself too, even if I don't understand Bitcoin as you, because I am invested a little bit in Bitcoin. So I presume that this Bitcoin investment I have done, it will go up in value. If a government made the same calculation, then it would make sense that at least they put some part of their portfolio in it, right? As you're saying.
yeah, yeah, you know, in retrospective, it is inevitable, right? This is
Well, that
what
is it.
Elon
When it
Musk
will
will.
happen, it will keep value
No,
of
no, but
Bitcoin. It will keep.
this is what happens with hyper-Balkanization. You know, the companies now there's going to be a rush in the companies to acquire Bitcoin. What is happening is that before MicroStrategy or Tesla, the perception was very different. But now you know it defeats plenty of arguments of companies that say that Bitcoin, you know, is no longer the drug money, it's something more. You know, Elon Musk is invested in Bitcoin and his
He
companies
didn't
invested.
like it. You know? Has he changed his mind? I mean, he was like kind of joking
Oh yeah,
about
but this
Bitcoin,
is this
or
is very. But also the sailor,
when
the
what
guy
I
from.
wonder is like in a bit of a paranoid mindset is. Was he thinking that the guys who are investing in Bitcoin are the same, like are invested in Tesla, and then he didn't want like
No, 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 no. I think it's a natural evolution. I mean, the guy of MicroStrategy, this Michael Seiler, he also at the beginning wasn't he. There are all tweets of him that he wasn't he was quite negative about Bitcoin.
okay.
But then, you know, people at the beginning don't have the time to study this in depth, and they just receive some inputs of different informations, and some of these you see
Yeah, but it
Nobel
is
Prize
becoming
Krugman that says
less
that.
risky as we go, and then as I say, like this is like also something that you said in this conversation with Juan, and it's just that I don't understand Bitcoin as yourself. Right? That I know. If I've just, I mean, first time I've traded Bitcoin in my life was 2018 or something like that. Then, but why I'm saying this. Yes, it's in the, I don't understand US dollar perfectly or Swiss franc. You know, Swiss franc used to be pegged. I mean, I'm paid my salary in Swiss franc, and it used to be pegged with euro at 1.20, and then that was artificial because the the Swiss central bank was selling Swiss franc in order to keep the price at that level, and then they stopped doing that. And at some point, I was like given a 20% pay raise without doing anything. You know, I don't know.
It's always good to be paid in Swiss franc. You know that the Swiss franc is kind of the stable coin for FX traders. Right? You know, this is kind of the hard currency.
Yeah, no, I know that it is like a refugee of and that they have this problem that the currency is too strong, and even today I think maybe they are still doing the same. But the thing is that I don't know it very well, you know, and it just I mean, I don't need to know it very
That's
well.
absolutely
I
true.
just know that it is more solid than, say, Zimbabwean dollar, and then that Bitcoin is becoming like, it's still too volatile, but it's becoming less and more safe. And at some point, if the trends continue, it will become like obvious for anyone.
Indeed, I have given you an example. Is that you know, I couldn't figure out the how to whom the Spanish central bank did sell its gold. You know, it's an example of how complex is monetary and how opaque is monetary theory and the policy of central bank. Also, you don't know what are the reasons for rate. I mean, interest rates increase or decrease, or the interest rate policies.
Yeah.
There is no, you know, there's an uncertainty about the
any
interest rate,
product, and when you take a mortgage, you
all
don't
of
know
this
these
is
things.
simpler in Bitcoin. All of this is much simpler in Bitcoin, because in Bitcoin you know exactly what is the monetary inflation. You know, it's programmed. You know that in 4 years there will be a halving. Right now the monetary inflation is about around 1.7%, and after the halving will be half of it at least. You know, indeed, what happens is that Bitcoin is much simpler than the dollar or the euro. The truth is that, and even people,
I'm starting to think that, because I mean, people used to
no,
buy
but
U.S.
I can
bonds, and it's like,
I can
you know, I don't understand U.S. bonds. Like it's not that I understand everything about Bitcoin, but I feel almost safer putting my
no, but
money in
there are some
Bitcoin.
basic parameters. So, for example, I mean, if you look in the, I did some FX trading. You know, the currency
Yeah.
trading. That is it's a very different market of what you. But what one of the leading indicators for a currency is the interest rate that it pays, and it fixes some trend between pairs of currencies. You know, depending the comparison between interest rates. Now, this, of course, there is some volatility, because you don't know. They may decide next week to change the official interest rate. The Fed may change it, and then you don't have, there's an unknown parameter there that can change. I mean, and it's kind of difficult to forecast. And people, indeed, when central bankers, the chairman of the Fed makes a declaration, people are trying to figure out what he means and what it means for the interest rate. You know, so this, for example, you don't need that for Bitcoin. You know exactly what is the interest rate. So you know, is in the long run, Bitcoin will be less volatile than euro and dollar. And
But it may
can
be that I don't know
probably,
that the best crypto is Monero and not Bitcoin. That's a real risk, no? It may be that the good
Monero
money
has
is.
a lower inflation. Uh, it has another problem that is a problem or an advantage. That's an anonymous coin. But because it's an anonymous coin, sometimes there are some exchanges that don't accept Monero. So that's you take one property and can be good for one thing and worse for others. Yeah, but from the point of view of the monetary inflation, the Monero is better. But just because the way they have programmed the inflation, it makes it less inflationary. Now you see, this monetary inflation plays in the long run. if Bitcoin is increasing its value, it's in part, well, the most part is for adoption and exponential increase of adoption, but also, it's because it's controlling its inflation, its monetary inflation. If instead of decreasing the monetary inflation, you increase it, the value will be much lower. And also, people are anticipating. I mean, we can say that if in 10 years, if Bitcoin is still here, the inflation will be the best of anything. It will be the hard currency. So if you hold it now for 10 years, if nothing changes, which is hard to tell because many things can change, but it will be the best currency in the world. I mean,
Yeah,
that's for
well,
sure.
this is the thing that I'm sorry, Ricardo, because we're more than 2 hours. It's okay.
Ah,
I told you 2 hours.
yeah, we can
Yeah,
continue
we
another day.
can. You don't have an appointment. Okay.
No, I didn't have an appointment. I have to
Um,
have it later, but no, that's fine.
well, this thinking this is that you both use Bitcoin halving as something that is real, but you also say that, I mean, I heard you in the podcast from Juan that I'm referring all the time, that I mean, the people that presume that Bitcoin could go to zero, they may also get it right if something unexpected happens. I mean, some Monero, I don't know, something that we cannot fathom happens, but you say like not really zero because I would buy them all, and so there will be always some
Oh,
market.
for
That's
sure.
like the cultist aspect of Bitcoin. It also ensures that there will always be some demand for Bitcoin. But anyway, the thing is, as you trade Bitcoin, it's also something that you were mentioning in the same podcast that like markets, like I don't know, they open on Monday, they close on Friday, and then there are guys who that sell on Friday because they don't want to take the tail risk of like a war starting on the weekend. But with Bitcoin, you cannot do these things, right? How do you cover for these kind of tail risks if something like absolutely unexpected happen?
Well, I mean, you have to make a list of risks that can happen, and there are risks associated at the type of coin. So I have other coins just for hedging for this risk. So it I mean, there's nothing for sure. So you don't know if Bitcoin is going to be. Now, my theory is that the strongest coin is going to be the coin which is more secure with most proof of work, and also the idea is that you can chain and you, the technologies hasn't been developing into the direction because it takes some time, but essentially you can you could chain the security of a new project to the Bitcoin security. You can peg the coin or the technology just to use. And this the example is the Lightning Network. So you build your contracts on the Bitcoin blockchain, and then you have a second layer where you can do your payments instantaneously without fees, etc. This is a good example of what I think will develop in the future. People, what they have done is with what is becoming important is smart contracts, etc. But imagining that some other coins takes over, it's not going to be instantaneously. It will take some time, and we'll see it coming.
You will
But
see
it's good to
coming.
hedge having different kinds of coins. So the only thing you can do is to also it's natural that I don't own only Bitcoin because you when you have to diversify your portfolio. Even sometimes it's not easy to do, but for example, gold is a good edge. You need to have other properties that's
Well,
a good
that's
edge.
the thing. How you fathom the future? You really think that people may in like 40 years time use Satoshi to buy bread, baguette, or it will be more like, I mean, gold today that you don't use it, and it will be like something that
Well,
we will use
they're
something
going.
that is pegged to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will be like for savings. I don't know. How do you think that will happen?
So it will be the two things. I mean, what I'm telling you, what this is why it's important developing the Lightning Network, because you can use Bitcoin on chain for long time savings, for like gold, like physical gold. But at the same time, you can open channels and lock some Bitcoin on payment channels to use Bitcoin for buying a coffee or a baguette, buying bread or buying in the grocery store. And the implementation of the Lightning Network is already something real, but it has to be improved to be more decentralized, etc.
How does it
But
work in a nutshell?
in a so it works
In a
in a nutshell in the
nutshell.
following. Okay. So using these small sets of instructions that are allowed in Bitcoin, I can open a payment channel with you. So this means we can open a payment channel. So you let's say that each one of us locks one Bitcoin or less or some satoshis, and we lock it in the blockchain with a transaction. Okay, that has some instructions. In particular, you need to sign. We need both to sign in order to unblock this Bitcoin. All right. And then what we do is I want to pay you something. I just send you a signature, a signed transaction for the amount I pay you, so that you can unblock it and get this money. But we don't need to go on the Bitcoin blockchain. We can just exchange signatures.
Okay, it's not immediate. As at some point of time in the future, I will unblock that
Yeah,
transaction that
but
said to
I
block it.
cannot cheat. Indeed, the good thing is that if I try to cheat, so to pay you and then to unblock my bitcoins, then you can see it. You have your software that monitors the Bitcoin blockchain, and you can send your transaction and get all the money. So if I try to cheat, I will lose everything. So then we exchange these signatures. So it means that we, in some sense, I can make you Bitcoin payments, but they are not reflected in the blockchain. Okay, they're just we have
Yeah.
the
It's
at
like
any
we
time.
have like a balance between you and I,
Yes,
and that we
there is an
can like
account of how,
at
how,
some
how, how
point.
many bitcoins is in each side, and at any moment, any one of us can unblock it with the
Well,
actual
that's,
balance.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, I mean, I don't know the details, but like credit card companies probably work in a similar
No,
way in that you.
well, no. The credit card companies, there is the company that checks that you have the balance. All right. Here, there is no credit card company. It's just something that is locked in the blockchain. These bitcoins are blocked in the blockchain. And now, the best thing is that once we have an open channel between you and me, so imagine that you have an open channel with Nassim. Okay, Nassim Taleb. You also do the same. You open a channel, and I don't have an open channel with Nassim, but I can pay Nassim through you, because I can send you a payment, a conditional payment that you cannot touch it. The only thing you can do is to forward it to Nassim and keep some fee if you like to, just to make the intermediary. So once you have open channels, you can compose them. So, and then the mathematical problem is you want to pay for your bread at the bakery store or whatever. You only need to have some open channels, and they only need to have a path that reaches the baker. And then
Okay.
I can just pay instantaneously, like I will do with a credit card. Now, why it's better than Visa? It's better than Visa because there are almost no commissions, and there won't be, because there is no cost. You don't. I mean, to open the channel, you need to pay a fee for opening the channel on the Bitcoin blockchain. But after that, the only fee will be that what you ask to make an intermediary on the path of the channel. You cannot ask too much, because there are other people that can go around you. Okay.
Okay. This is also something that I don't quite understand because I have not studied Bitcoin that much. Is when all Bitcoin will be mined, uh, what happens, or is like the last Bitcoin to be mined is so difficult to mine that it will never happen?
Okay, two things can happen. So first thing, maybe the last Bitcoin to be mined will mathematically is in 2114, I mean, because once you do halvings, and at some point you arrive at one Satoshi, that is the basic unit, and you cannot divide it by two. So at this point, if the value of Bitcoin is very high, you can increase the number of decimals and continue mining fractions of Satoshis. Okay, that's one thing. But the miners are going to live through the transaction fees. The transaction fees already is an important percentage of the reward fee. So what the miners own for mining a block is not only the reward, the new Bitcoin, but it's also the transaction fees of all the transactions in the block. So this is what is going to move. I mean, to make mining interesting. Now, of course, if the Lightning Network develops, the payments on the Lightning Network are not going to give you any fee to the miners. Only when you open the channel. All right. But you have to understand also that these channels, if you empty them, you need to open new channels. So there's some economy that is going to develop on fees and self. And in any case, if the fees go down, what happens is that people stop mining. So it's like when the price of Bitcoin went down, at some points, it was more expensive to mine Bitcoins than just to, it wasn't
Well, let's
interesting.
say like same for petrol. Let's say like, and they say that the last petrol, the last barrel of petrol, probably it will not be that expensive because people will have stop looking for them because price would have gone down, and we would have find something else. I don't know.
No, but what I mean is that in the Bitcoin economy, everything is self-stabilizing. So if mining is not interesting, some miners will go out of business or will run out and will do other things. But then the hash rate goes down, and then it becomes more interesting to mine, more profitable. So we reach a level when it stabilizes. There's going to be some stabilization of.
That's something that you say that it is infinitely divisible. So you can create like right now the minimum unit is Satoshi, but you could go.
Yeah, you need for a hard fork. I mean, you need to all the nodes agree that we want to increase the number of decimals.
And how does the governance work? Because I don't know about it. Who decides if we do a new division of Satoshi?
In general, when we make a change on the protocol, it's just there is a GitHub of Bitcoin where people propose new ideas and implement new ideas, and they do the code, and there is a test network where you can run the test network, the new ideas on the test network, and people try. Of course, they try it first in the test network to see how it works, and if it works, and then if it's a good idea, well, if it's an improvement, an objective improvement, there is no reason that people don't want to adopt it, and it's adopted without problems. Sometimes there is a divergence, like it was for the size of the block size. An obvious way to escalate Bitcoin. Now, the problem of Bitcoin is that you can run at most 6-7 transactions per second, okay, which is much less than what you need for a global payment network. For a global payment network, you better have some hundreds of transactions or thousands of transactions per second. So once you implement the Lightning Network, you will have it. But well, it's implemented already. It works. The only thing is not what I would say is that it's not first to find the routes of payments is not optimized, and also the wallets that exist. Well, there are wallets that exist, but it still needs some adoption, and some testing. So they recommend people to test the Lightning Network with small amounts, but there are some services, like for example, there is Bitrefill. So what is Bitrefill? You can purchase coupons for spending in Amazon or in any kind of electronics stores or whatever, and you send them Bitcoins, and they send you a coupon for that you can use. For example, in Bitrefill, they use the Lightning Network, so you can refill your account instantaneously using the Lightning Network. So it's already used. I mean, it's already used for some purposes. But
You say that if the idea is good, most of the community will adopt it and it's fine. But what if there was like a perfect 50-50 split? Then you would have like a bimetallism. It's like if I want to do like a division of Satoshi, but there is like a substantial portion of developers that they don't want to do that. Then
well, in
we
the
will have so
protocol,
many forks as countries or something like that.
no, and what happens in Bitcoin is a bit more serious than in other coins. You have a basic protocol that before doing a fork, so I change a version. So you change the rules of the protocol. You are not never going to make it incompatible with what was before, but it's just the format of the blocks or the instructions is changed. Now, what happens is that there is a period where the miners signal the new adoption. So they will in the blocks they mine, they will signal that they are using the new software. Okay, and in principle we should wait for a 90-something% of the miners to signal of the blocks to signal the new software in order to implement to launch the new version. Now, what has happened in the past is that some miners, and this was the origin of the Bitcoin Cash fork. It's not really. I mean, the Bitcoin Cash fork it wasn't really about big blocks. Officially, it was about big blocks, but some miners, this Bitmain company, they opposed this SegWit. So SegWit it was a format of transactions that allowed to put more transactions in a block, and they were opposing this, and they were opposing this because they were using mining algorithms that were incompatible with this new version. And then there was a big portion of the hash rate that didn't want to upgrade. And it took some time, and this was the reason that for some time, the price of Bitcoin is stagnate from 2013 to 2017, because there was no solution to this problem until people realized that the miners are not the only ones with powers, and there was what is called the user activated soft fork, UASF. See, where people say, okay, you miners don't want to upgrade, then we that run the nodes will reject transactions with the old format and will reject your blocks with the old format. So even if you keep mining, if most of the network rejects your blocks, you will keep mining for just a few blocks and not for the whole net. And this proved that it's not only the hash rate that is in power, the power is in different places. So it was very interesting. So this was activated, this soft fork, and indeed, there was a fork. I mean, this is where Bitcoin Cash was born, that had bigger blocks and was incompatible. So if you had one Bitcoin, it became one Bitcoin and one Bitcoin Cash. You had the blockchain that is split into two branches, and well, it was great. I mean, you will get and it was very surprising. And all these phenomena are new for monetary theory. There is no fork of a fiat currency. You know that the dollar splits into kinds of dollars or things like that. And it was very interesting because, of course, people made the reasoning is that okay, if you have a fork, the total value of both coins will be smaller than the value of the coin. This is the normal reasoning. Say, well, the hash rate, the security becomes weaker for each coin. So, of course, another reasoning is that okay.
To me, it sounds like a political parties and splitting into two or something.
Yeah, but yeah, for example, for political party also, the union makes a force, right? So if you split,
no, but like if you go like for independence proponents in Catalonia, it's like they have like kind of figure out that they officially will say you like we are divided and that's like bad for the movement. But actually, they get more votes than when they were get together. If they go as like 2 or 3 options, they get more votes than when they try to go as like one single platform.
Oh well, that I think also the reason there is different is that the political views of people are getting polarized everywhere. So well, yeah, and I think what happens in Catalonia, I think well we can discuss it later, but is you know there was all this referendum stuff that I think the Rajoy government didn't deal with it properly because they had the interest of not solving the question because they were getting votes outside of Catalonia, and also the separatist parties in Catalonia they weren't having any interest in solving the question because they were getting votes in Catalonia. So in some sense.
Yeah, it was like a contradiction, like necessary
Nobody
contradiction.
wants to reach an agreement on anything. So and then we got the population divide. But okay, let's come back to the technology for the hard fork of Bitcoin Cash. What happened, what was very interesting, is that then we had the fork and we had two coins, and the sum of the value of the two coins was higher than the original Bitcoin.
Yeah.
This is completely counterintuitive, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting because I mean I did spend a week thinking about it, how it can be that because it makes no sense. Okay, so I keep dividing and then the total value increases. It cannot be like this. Okay, at some point it will. Otherwise it's very simple. You just keep
How do you
dividing.
explain it?
Sorry.
How do you
Yeah.
explain it?
So that is my explanation. Is that indeed there was a lot of tension because of this fork that people tried to convince the majority to go one way or another, and this was hurting the Bitcoin price. Bitcoin was devaluated because of this. So and a fork was perceived and is still perceived as something negative. It's something that you don't want for a coin. You want a coin to stay with its full hash rate. So what happened at the moment that there was the split, the tension disappeared. So the uncertainty, there was an uncertainty. We didn't know if we will go one direction or the other. And then what happened?
It
We
resolved
had
the
both
problem
directions.
naturally.
Yeah, we had both directions. So the mechanism of forks is a fantastic way of solving these decision problems, and that's fine. Now, whoever believes that Bitcoin Cash with bigger blocks is better, just moves his bitcoins, sell his bitcoins to Bitcoin Cash. And the opposite, I did the opposite. I did sell my Bitcoin Cash to get my Bitcoin to buy more Bitcoin.
When you explain it, makes sense.
Yeah, well, but I think at the time nobody understood. I mean, not everybody agrees with this explanation. This is my explanation.
Yeah, of course.
Because later also Bitcoin Cash did split several times, and then also we had the small forks of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Diamond. I mean, it was kind of crazy. This is the end of 2017. You were
Bitcoin
getting
Lite.
Sorry.
Bitcoin Lite, no?
Well, I mean, there was probably several, maybe 100 of forks that, but these weren't really forks. They were just splitting the chain with a very small hash rate. But whatever, it had some value. I mean, people were buying these. So, and I remember I was selling all this garbage stuff. Okay, because I didn't believe on these small coins. I mean, it's just. I mean, also, well, maybe it's not very wise to sell everything, but is when you clearly you see that this is not going anywhere. This is small coins, you just sell it, and I could get some value from these forked coins.
Fork.
That later it proved to be the right decision because most of them went to zero, and Bitcoin Cash is not zero, but it's still one at the 5th place probably on the capitalization ranking. But I remember to have sold Bitcoin Cash for $600 each coin, and now it's probably around 400. So and Bitcoin, and then I passed it to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin went up several orders of magnitude. I mean, so
good catch. This is just I promise you to ask you this question, and then we will wrap up soon, because I've taken like abused your time. I heard you in Juan's podcast say that actually you have never asked for a credit in your life, and that you don't think that banks should be giving credit for productive for non-productive activities like housing. And that sounded like, I mean, as much as I listen to anything you say like carefully, that sounded like a bit. I mean, and there are people like Taleb says things like this also, and people like in those groups that I'm telling you. And it seems like, I don't know. It's just strange. Like also like I mean, is this something that you believe for you, or really you think that there should be regulation that would prevent banks giving credit for housing? Because that's like I know a bit like about it. You know, I'm mostly real estate myself,
Yeah.
and it's just like you
Okay.
think really should be prevented, because for me it's
No,
like
I mean,
you prevent
I'm
optionality of people.
all right, all right. This depends on your own views. I'm kind of quite libertarian in this sense that I believe that people should do whatever they want with the money, of course, and the state should not tell you what to do. But also, I believe that the state should not give fiscal incentives for people borrowing and taking,
I agree
for
with
real
that.
estate.
You know,
So
when there were
this
like
is, I think,
these deductions of in your
the
tax
intervention, the
whatever
intervention,
for
the
having a
government
mortgage, I
intervention,
cannot understand it.
the government intervention that we have in this direction is, in my opinion, is in the negative direction. But it's the negative direction for people. It's not in the negative direction for banks that make their business with the with all this money that people borrow and they cannot repay. You know, they make the money with the bankruptcies of people. You know, the people are just go bankrupt when there is a crisis. And I did explain. I wrote before Bitcoin. It was in 2007. At the end of 2007, it was published in the first days of 2008. I did write a paper in El País about financial mathematics and this type of credit question. And so I was explaining how the financial mathematic technology did allow to evaluate. The title is in Spanish is el polvo de polen que hace temblar las finanzas mundiales, which means in English the translation is the dust, the pollen dust that
Makes
that you know
tremble
that
world
troubles
finance.
the foundations of finance, and it's an image to the fact that the Brownian motion that was observed by Brown is is grains of pollen that are sitting on a liquid, and you see that they are bouncing around. It's just
Randomly.
The molecules that hit them that give them a Brownian motion. And this Brownian motion is the principle of stochastic mathematics. That is the principle that in Bachelier theory. Bachelier was the founder. His PhD was the founder of financial mathematics. He was a student of Henri Poincaré, and he made the first mathematical model of the stock market. And later it was developed in our modern models, and most of the financial derivatives are valuated. There's a mathematical valuation based on these mathematical models. But these mathematical models are wrong. Indeed, Benoit Mandelbrot observed in the 50s already that the assumption that you have all these long tail phenomena. I mean, that is that is one of the central points of Taleb, of Nassim Taleb philosophy and theories, but for the financial markets was Mandelbrot that observed that there were, if you look at the statistics of daily variations of the cotton price. Why he took the cotton price? Because it was the one for which he had the longest historical series going back to the beginning of the 19th century, and he observed that it was not true.
My great grandfather was trading with cotton, actually.
Good. So this was giving you this. You had long tails. You didn't have a Gaussian. So it's a log normal distribution that is usually used. That means that the percentage of increase is a Gaussian. But this is not true. you had thicker tails, the tails, and this explains why you have sometimes some price movements that are simply impossible with a Gaussian, and that happen. And so in this article in El País, unfortunately this is in Spanish, but I think right
Oh,
now
I
you can
will
go
look for it.
you can look at the webpage, and for people that don't speak Spanish, they can just use Google Translate, and we get a pretty good translation.
It gets a decent one. Yeah.
So I was explaining that indeed it was a mistake to use blindly these mathematical models and just borrowing all this credit bubble that has been created, because this is kind of borrowing money from the future, and we will have to pay for that. We will have to pay, and indeed the crisis of 2008 proved that we did have to pay, because there were all these you know. All this real estate money that was flowing from the banks in a crazy way, and totally unsound way.
It was very crazy, yeah.
Now there is a good movie about this. There's a good movie. I don't remember.
Not The Big Short, huh?
No, it's a movie about an economics professor that is an Argentinian. And I have to check. I wanted to check the title of the movie. It's not it's pretty good, because so the guy, what happens is that this economic professor, he wins a big prize of a chain of supermarkets, and he gets one item of everything they sell. And so he gets a motorbike, he gets a car, he gets a plane, he gets a cornflake bottle, but okay, and then what happens is that suddenly he thinks he's rich, but he's not rich, because all this stuff requires a lot of money to sustain. You have
maintenance.
Maintenance.
He needs like a garage or something to store the things.
Or for the plane, and if you sit in an airport, you need to pay for the renting of the hangar where it sits.
I don't know this movie.
It's not easy to. It's not liquid, and he explains that credit does not make sense, because, and I give you this explanation here, is that imagine that everybody in a country borrows to buy his house, all right?
Yeah, like in Spain, it's like 80% of the country doing this.
Yeah. So imagine that 100% of people just borrows more than they have to buy his house. So okay, so people don't understand that the house doesn't produce anything. I mean, people have some confusion, because the house, of course, there's a lot of economic activity related to building houses, but in itself, it's not like a machine that produces an object, or that you can sell. A house doesn't produce in itself nothing, doesn't produce anything that you can sell. So now everybody in the country just borrows the money, and everybody in the country is employed in construction of houses. Okay. Now where the money for the interest payments comes from? There is no money to pay the interest. There is no money. Everybody's constructing houses that produce nothing. There is no intrinsic wealth that is created. So this 10% of interest, or per year, or whatever interest is, it comes from nowhere. There is nowhere you can take it. So it means that if everybody is borrowing in a non-controlled way, there are going to be a certain percentage of bankruptcies.
You know what I see is that you and we don't think in the same framework. I think more like with historic parallels and that kind of thing. And I also say that, like, what happens in countries where there is no credit, and still, there are people are buying housing, but like through other means. And my father is a bit genealogist, and he researched one of his ancestors who seems it was a moneylender. And it seems he was like giving people money when there were no access to credit through banks or something, with the house as a collateral. And then one of his ancestors was like doing this, a guy called Ambrosio Oliveras, and then he was not getting, like, he was actually doing a fake sale and buy a contract for a house of a guy, and the guy was not paying him the rent that was the interest payments instead of the, and he sued the guy, and like 25 or 30 years later he was given reason, but he was already dead, and one of his children inherited the house that was on a lawsuit, and it's like I think like at the end, like people would do like similar stuff through other means, or
Yeah, I
even
mean,
if you remove credit from housing, I see like in Russia there was like not credit, and people like with poor people were not having access to housing. So at the end, it's like you are removing optionality for the have-nots, the guys who generate a lot of cash
no,
flows,
but
they can access to housing.
if you don't have money to buy a house, you can always rent it, a house according to your income. I
Yes,
mean,
you can. Yeah,
and
of course, of course. But in
and
some countries,
most of the
and
people,
Spain is special regarding that.
no,
Sometimes
no, but it's just listen
the
in the
rental
in
is
the
like more
no, no,
expensive than the mortgage payment.
yeah, but you see, it's just recent. In the 60s and the 70s, most of the people in Spain were renting, not buying houses.
But it was
And
designed for that. Is the thing, like that the policy for like that became like Spain became an proprietor society. It was Franco. Franco, it was
no, no, but
Arrese that well, they did the horizontal act
yeah, but it was different
property
because
before
Franco has some.
in Barcelona you needed to have like the whole building, right? And it was a ministry of Franco called Arrese that did like the horizontal law act, and people could buy like small apartments or pieces of land. My grandfather would be a landlord, and he sold a lot of those apartments to the tenants because he could only sell to the tenants. That there was like an asymmetry in the law. He
No,
could not
but
sell to anyone.
indeed the policies of Franco, some of the policies were very social. I mean,
Absolutely. I
the
mean, it was
fascists
like
were
the
socialists. Huh?
euthanasia. If you have read Piketty, and this is the thing that you know that I like Taleb, but some of the things that Piketty has written, I also like, and he writes about the euthanasia of the rentier, and he said like I mean he talks about France, but it's like in Spain these things happened also under Franco, you know.
No, but the situation was very different at the time of Franco because it was an autarkic economy. Now, what is the modern trend? I mean, what I find. So okay, so I have explained a little bit why I don't believe that just mathematically the credit doesn't make sense in the sense to give uncontrolled credit, but there is another political reason why it doesn't make well. It makes sense for some, is that people people that take credit, they become slaves of their credit. I mean, when people borrow money for buying their house and they have to make a monthly payment for keeping the house, if they lose their job, they also lose their house.
Yeah.
So it's a way of social control of people. I
Yes.
mean, and indeed, this is not innocent. I mean, if you look in the financial world and the bank world, if you look at the total amount of monetary mass of money of all sorts, it's not just cash; it's all sorts of money and derivatives. There is more money. You could buy several times the entire earth. I mean,
Yeah,
everything,
well,
all the
but
lands, all
this
the houses.
I don't fully agree because it's also like you decentralize home ownership. Say, in when my grandfather had a building and had 35 tenants, he was a bit of a small feudal lord, you know, and it's like, and if you go down to like Rome and Cicero, they had the insula, and it was like a bit of the
Yeah,
same
but what
system.
I'm talking about
And
is not this. What I'm talking about is about the money, not of people like your grandfather that was a businessman and
no,
had good houses.
he was a pure inheritance. His
Yeah,
father was a cotton trader, and he was rich, and he
yeah, but
inherited
I'm talking
the.
about I'm talking about the big capitals that have so much money that the only useful thing they can do with this money is not buying purchasing things, it's purchasing people. And how you purchase people? you give them credit. In the way you give them credit and you control is the most powerful way of controlling people is just to make them borrow money.
But I think the rational, and it's also the same of Singapore. So Singapore, it was like I mean, like Spain, like in the 60s, it was third world country, and they had this authoritarian leader called Lee Kuan Yew, who was a prime minister for 30 years or something like that. It was like a kind of a despot, but like an enlightened one, and he wanted to foster home ownership, because he, like, his bet was like, if people are owners, they will not revolt, they will not become communists. And then he expanded credit so that people could buy their housing, and they did all these HBD programs in Singapore. And it is not so different to what the Franco regime was doing. They wanted people to be owners so that they are not like disenfranchised, and they will not
Well,
revolt.
that's true
They
that
have something. They are not totally convex.
In the Franco's policies, for example, there was a big deal of population control. The best example I have, when I was a kid, my parents, we used to have our summer vacations in a village in Palencia, which is north of Spain, Barruelo de Santullan, near Aguilar de Campo. And this village is a village of miners. There was a lot of coal that was extracted, and then the coal mines were closed, and the people left, and they were coming back for vacations. But they all have their houses. They were what they call the Casas Baratas, a big neighborhood of the village, which were houses of official constructions that were kind of, and they were giving to the workers. And this was one of the villages that was very important during the Second Republic in Spain before Franco, because there was the Revolución de Asturias in 32.
That Franco put off, at the
Franco
orders of the Republican government.
He was the military that was in command of the military forces that repressed the miners in Asturias, but also in Barruelo de Santullan. It was terrible in Barruelo de Santullan, and I think probably for controlling the miners, and that they don't have any reason to revolt, or at least they have some basic. But the miners had some force. I mean, because the miners are tough people, and they had explosives.
Explosives, yeah.
I mean, it's not. You can joke with them. I mean, it's. So well, I mean, yeah, it's this. There is certainly, the housing has been used as a way of controlling the population, but now it's more sophisticated. It's through credit, and people only think about what is the monthly payment, but when you add up the monthly payment, you realize that you purchase with one house with credit, at the end you are paying 2 or 3 houses. Which right now is different. The interest rates are very low.
Yeah,
very low, and
that's the thing. That the optionality, it's crazy. It's I don't understand things anymore, but it may make sense to get credit just as an investment.
Yeah,
it's so cheap.
You can mortgage your house.
Well, this is like I did an MBA, and I could get through ICO, Instituto de Crédito Oficial, a credit to do the MBA, to pay for the MBA at 0% rate, and I took it just. I could pay for it because I had savings, but I took the credit just because it was 0% rate.
But
so
I am different than you. When I was in the United States, when I purchased my first car, the car dealer offered me a credit at 0%. And at the time in the bank, they were paying 4 or 5% at least. And I say, no, I don't want a credit. I have never taken a credit. I don't. And then he tried to convince me that, of course, in the US, it's good to have a credit record so that then you can borrow more for your house later. But I didn't want, and he didn't understand why. And my reason is very simple. If I take a credit, so of course I could take the 0% credit and save my money at 4 or 5% in the bank.
Yeah. So that was my rationale. It was making like a rational case. I don't need the credit, but
my rationale goes a little bit over that. Is that I acquire an obligation to make a monthly payment.
I'm still paying for that.
I mean, of course, 0%. So I just had to take the money from the bank and transfer to the credit company to pay my 0% credit. But what happens if we have a black swan? So the bank goes bankrupt. I lose my money. If the
I
bank,
don't get you. If you have I mean, if you are indebted to that bank and the bank disappears,
no,
the other way
but what I'm
around.
saying is that I had the money to pay for my car, but he wanted me to take a 0% credit for the car. All right, and I keep my money in the bank, which generates some interest. All
Okay.
right.
Okay.
But then I have a risk. Is if the bank goes bankrupt,
Okay.
I can lose my money, my savings. On the other hand, if the credit card company goes bankrupt, someone else purchases the credit, and my credit is still. I mean, I have to refund them.
Okay.
So
So you
it's
see
gonna
the
go away,
asymmetry. Yeah.
and it imposes me to pay. Maybe I can got sick or got unemployed or got some problems that I need all my money of my savings, and then I cannot repay, and then I get in credit trouble. So of course you would say, well, if you pay for a car, you don't have the
Let
money.
me give you my example. You can get unemployed, and then and you are not generating any income, and you are living on that credit that was 0% that you took. It's a real example.
Yeah,
It
but you
sort of
shouldn't be
happened to me.
living. You
It's like
shouldn't be living
I
in that
was
credit
living in
because
credit for like 6 months,
yeah,
like cheap credit, and
but
then I got a job, and then I started repaying again.
I
And
mean, this is a good plan, but it has some risk. All right, it has the risk that you are borrowing money from the future, and you are counting on getting a job in a few months and be able to repay it. But imagine
no,
that you get sick.
it was no plan. Actually, it was more like I quit a job that I could not stand anymore, so to say, and I was for almost 6 months unemployed.
But you see that there are some hidden risks, and people don't realize that. For example, when a pandemic came, and people that were thinking that they have a permanent job without risk, and suddenly they
Oh yeah,
discover
yeah.
that they get unemployed, and even their business is closing, and or their business no longer exists because there are no tourists that come. You know,
Well, I rent my apartment and I have a license in Barcelona through Airbnb. No more tourists coming, though. It's like they start like people are. I mean, some Americans that want to like to move to Barcelona, people that can go work remotely, like a bit like same kind of population like demographic than myself, but especially Americans that are the ones that use more Airbnb, and then they want to come to Barcelona like for longer. Like if they would come for a week, now they come for 3 weeks, and then sometimes they would stay in Barcelona and things like that. You know, this is
I know some of them. There are some people in Bitcoin involved in development, developers, etc., that they prefer to live in Barcelona, for example. There are some community of developers.
Barcelona is it's a bit anti-fragile. It's
No, but
some
Barcelona is a very
anti-fragility.
attractive city. I mean, okay, so I mean, of course, we are from Barcelona, so no, we are not very
Yeah,
attractive.
we are biased, but it's like it seems that in New York, it's a bit collapsing. I've not been there for 1 year. I went there for Real World Risk Institute last year, but real estate, at least it is here, not yet. And there is also well, yeah, people are, there is more unemployment, but you also have this flow of people that are moving in, like the new uh, remote workers. You know, this is that I think that maybe Barcelona is the good size. New York is too big, and Barcelona maybe it's the appropriate size, not too.
Well, I think Europe is very attractive for Americans. I mean, I was involved in the exchange of American students from the University of California, and many of them they come to study a few months in Spanish universities, and the University of California has programs in Barcelona and Madrid. And in the statistics, many of them stay when they finish their degree, they come back to Spain and they settle in Spain. Uh, I
Well,
think, well, I mean, it is maybe also a problem in the US because the US has, I remember when I first came to LA, it was very different than now. And I think if you talk with people that they will tell you the same about New York. Um, yeah, there's some evolution. I think the American empire is kind of getting decadent for by the year. I mean, you can see that the American power is shifting. It's shifting to Asia, and it's not shifting
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Europe.
yeah,
I mean, but then Spain has become a very strong place for tourism for young people. You cannot compare. I mean, if you look at the nightlife in Barcelona or Madrid, I mean, there is nothing similar elsewhere. If you go to Paris, there is nothing similar. I mean, and well, of course, there are some
well,
people that
Paris,
prefer
it would
nightlife
be
and no
like
problem.
something maybe that you can compare, but yeah, but like yeah, most
But nothing in Switzerland, for example, right?
yeah,
In
no,
Switzerland,
Switzerland is an excellent example. So this is just anecdote fact. One of the first time I went to Switzerland, I was a consultant. And I went to bar that is in near Zug, and I was working for a client that was hosted in Zug, and I was with the guy from Seville, and we went in bar like at 9 p.m. and looking for a bar, in bar, and there were no bars in bar, which it was like literally there were no bars in bar, in bar Switzerland. So
no, but the style of life in Spain is very attractive for people. I mean, on vacation and not on vacation.
yeah, well,
So
it's like very simple. Like I had a friend whose wife was working for the Norway embassy in the United Nations in New York. He told me he was paying like for a two-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, like something like $6,000 that was paid by the embassy. Now in Barcelona, you will not pay more than 2,000, right? So it's just, I mean, if you are a remote worker, it
yeah,
doesn't make any sense to go to
doesn't make any sense.
Manhattan.
No. No.
Well, just the last one because I've abused your time. You have created a scholarship, right? And you are like giving it, like granting a Bitcoin for
Yes.
students.
Well, I mean, I have it's an anonymous donation of 1 Bitcoin that sets up a fund to reward Spanish students in the International Mathematical Olympiad that get a gold medal. So the way it works is that I am in charge of making the Bitcoin transactions to the winners. The total amount of the fund is 1 Bitcoin that now is worth 38,000 euros. So the price for each gold medal will be 10,000 euros, which is quite good for a young student who is 18. So he can serve as a scholarship to study mathematics or whatever, but he can do whatever he wants, and is paid at the rate of Bitcoin in the day of the results of the proclamation of the results of the International Mathematical Olympiad. So in some sense, this is motivated to incentive the excellence of Spanish students, because we haven't had any gold medal in the 40 years that we have been participating in International Mathematical Olympiad, just to give an incentive. And I believe that, no, probably not, I don't know if this year or next year, but probably in the next few years, we will have some gold medals. So it would
Hopefully.
be nice to celebrate this, and
Well,
it's
you
also,
would have done your part, and
well, I mean, the reason is that I was the first Spanish to get a silver medal, and indeed, well, it's, well, I will really love to see someone that gets a
that
gold medal.
betters you.
Now, of
There
course,
is
the
there is
mathematics,
no one Spanish guy who has won gold medal ever. No,
not
no,
yet, not yet.
not yet. Okay, well,
So
hopefully.
this price is set. The fund is set up in Bitcoin. It's 1 Bitcoin. So
Okay.
this means that if Bitcoin gets to $500,000 or 400, it will be one of the most better funded prizes in mathematics, which
Well,
is kind of nice. I mean,
kudos
it's a new
kudos
idea.
to
It's just,
that.
just something
It's a great initiative that you are setting, and well, it's I appreciate it.
there is a web page. You can put the web page so that people can see
Okay,
the.
I'll put the link.
and well, I mean, also we accept donations. So people that want to donate to the fund of the prize just can make a Bitcoin transaction to the address of where the Bitcoin the fund sits, and also if they can make anonymous donations or just by name. Particulars can make a donation, also companies, etc. There are different instructions, so they can associate their name to the prize also. Anyways, I think it's a new idea, and probably well, I think it's going to be a good idea that
Hopefully.
we have prices like this that are set up. The funds are set up in Bitcoin, and this exploits the deflationary property of Bitcoin that over the years we expect it to grow in euro value. Now, of course, if it doesn't grow, it means that we have plenty of gold medals, so that's great also. So it's a win-win situation.
Okay. Oh, look, kudos to that, and thanks so much, Ricardo, for your time. We went almost to
Thank you,
3 hours.
questions, and nice to talk to you. And
Thank
then
you.
I will we'll talk some more in private. I mean,
Hopefully, hopefully.
pleasure.
This
I have some private questions.
I'm in Barcelona, but who knows where I will be next 6 months. But
Probably
if you are the kind of planner, maybe we will meet someday physically.
I will go back to Barcelona probably soon because well, I mean, I have my mother there.
That's our safest best bet. My parents live here, so I come here and I have an apartment here.
Good.
Okay, pleasure to meet you. I learned a lot, and
Okay.
hopefully we will do another one someday. Thank you.
Thank you to you.